Sorry. It's like my...
Good evening, Rick. Would you believe it's Dr. Doom?
What's on your evil mind?
Hold your insulting tongue and mark my words well.
How about this rumor that you are really Iron Man, Mr. Stark?
Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Comic Book Chronicles.
One second. I got lag.
And yeah, here we go. Starting off with another swimming episode here. I am your host, Roddykat. You can find me at Roddykat on Twitter. You can also find me at News Nerds Need on Twitter. You can also find me at CBCaps on Instagram. And that sound effect that you heard in the voice previously was coming from none other than one Agent_70 on Twitter and Instagram.
What's up, everybody? And of course, I'm lagging because Farrago, my soundboard program, updated, and it's definitely got some bugs in it. But what's up?
Where Brooklyn at? Where Brooklyn at? Where Brooklyn at?
And surprisingly enough, folks, if you're watching this video, you can see we have, to end up this crisis talk, we have one PCN_Dirt who has decided to return with us. You can find him at PCN_ on Twitter. You can also find him at Pop Culture Network on, Pop Culture Net on Twitter, popculturenetwork.com. His all into umbrella sites therein, as you can see if he flashed it up. And also Byte under Comic Reviews No Vowels.
No vowels.
Springfield, it's a hell of a town.
Yeah, I'm just switching between boards. There's a lag. Sorry about that.
It's all good. It's all good.
I'm telling you, you got to spend that government check on a new computer.
It's not enough. It's not enough. All I get is the single person amount. So, whatchamacallit? I mean, literally, I do have the money, but given the economic, trepidation everyone has, I'm not going to plunk it down until the end of the year, like I originally planned to get a brand new MacBook Pro.
Or you get a real computer
I saw
with
some
less
of your
money.
unopened Legends figures.
I could do that.
And that voice you just heard comes from, oh Lord, excuse me, friend of the show, Matt Wayne 97 on Twitter, who is back with us to discuss the rest of this here thing.
I don't know if I paid.
I still haven't gotten theme music from Matt. Sorry.
We'll work on it. We'll work on it.
I have a very specific song.
Okay, now I know. Now I need to know what it is.
It's Steven Seagal singing their Kung Fu Fighting during his opening monologue at Saturday Night Live.
Oh gosh.
See, I was thinking something simple like everybody Wang Chung tonight or something like that.
See, I think that one I only play when I have like someone when I enter a room and someone has like plays it on a boombox. But this like Steven Seagal thing is very subtle.
Gosh. All right, it's up to me. I'll make the call.
Yeah, we'll workshop that either one of those. Maybe we can blend the two. Who knows? We'll see what happens. Nevertheless, folks, not with us here tonight is one Tim DOGG98 on Twitter. You can also find him at CBCron on Twitter, which is the Comic Book Chronicles Twitter account. You can also find him at DClickNation. That's DKLIQNATION on Twitter. Also DClickNation.com. And also Comic Book Resources, where he's over there writing his face off. And you can find this here podcast on the Coast of the Podcast Network. That's CSPN.us.
Do it today.
You can also find this at your podcast perusal place of choice, whether it be Google Play, Apple iTunes, aka Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and or the Cold Slither Podcast Network's SoundCloud page. All right, folks, we are going to dig straight on into the main topic. We're not going to do news until later on. So we're going to pretty much continue where we left off with talking about DC Comics' Crisis on Infinite Earths, and it is on, not of, like I almost messed up and did last week. We're doing issues 7 through 12, and we got two heavy hitters here to do the heavy lifting on on the talk. So let us get on with the summary as we tend to do. As I pull it up, we start with issue number 7, which is called Beyond the Silent Night. And by the way, just think about this for later. We are doing clicks of the week, just so maybe want to think about the one through for this event. I know.
Right. Your choices are issues 7 through 12. So,
Yes.
so this is the issue is entitled Beyond Silent Night. The cover of this comic book is one of the classic covers that emanated from this series. It is done as ever by George Perez, and it is a big spoiler as to what actually happens within this issue. So I'm just going to ring the spoiler bell because there are still people like myself who have not yet read this or just now reading this in conjunction with this podcast.
Thanks.
So, but yeah, all you have to do is look at the cover and you know what happens in this issue. It is the cover of Superman holding headbanded Supergirl. And if you're not familiar with Supergirl with the headband, there's a reason why. It was because of this crisis.
What I was unfamiliar of was her pseudonym that we find out in the
I'm like,
this.
wait, was she adopted by Chinese folks?
Have you not seen the movie?
Her name was Linda
Supergirl?
Lee. I did not see the movie.
I have seen it, but I don't remember that.
Lee is not necessarily an Asian last name.
Well, I mean, hello, Stanley Lieber, but still.
General Robert Lee.
I know. Straight person.
No, keep this going. Just just put some more names out there. Let's see how far we can get. But yeah, to summary sake here. So we.
But yeah, she was Linda Lee in the movie. Yeah.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Weird.
Yeah.
So all I'm going to say is no one expects the cosmic exposition because we get a lot of that in this issue. We start off with a Who's Who reference. Pariah is doing this thing. We find out that all of this is in some part Oa's fault because usually at some point it always is. So we find out that back in the day on Oa, before the Guardians became the Guardians of the Green Lanterns, whatever. That's going to be confusing if I say Guardians of the Galaxy. But there's this one person, Owen, named Krona, which weirdly named for this day and time. Wanted to basically, he basically caused the birth of the multiverse with no short order because he was, trying to fly too close to the sun. The multiverse came about. Oa ended up being one with no doppelganger. So, but there was also Quard, who we see show up here. Krona got banished for his actions and apparently got seeded over the whole multiverse or universe rather. Then the Guardians came up and said, "Hey, we need to make sure everything's straight." So they made the Manhunters first, which not to be confused with Martian Manhunter. Then they created the Green Lantern Corps, as we come to find out here, and of course the Civil War within themselves because they can't seem to come up straight about how evil should be taken care of. The controllers came, the Animator was born, and so was the Monitor at the same time. The Animator was in the Animator universe, and he made his army and started taking over things. The Monitor was on the other side, trying to find out the meaning of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and 42 and all that kind of good mess. But he also knew what the Anti-Monitor was doing. Then them two went to war, and they knocked each other out. Stop me if I'm getting into things and this wrong. Pariah basically comes in and says, "Okay, well, here's where I come in on this," which he also related to Krona was a scientific big head and was like, "Well, I need to know what I need to know." But in doing so, he makes this animator cosmic cube and then steps inside of it and ends up basically freeing the Monitor and the Anti-Monitor, who had knocked themselves out and put themselves in stasis during their war. He freed them both, or so he thought, but we will get to that later. Flips back around to the Monitor, who to where Harbinger, I believe Leela says that, well, this is what the Monitor had in store for Pariah, basically using him, as he said, as we said last week, as the Silver Surfer to impending danger. So he's the one flips around and starts his crying montage. Let's see. Then we flip to Layla's Harbinger's origin story, and then Lady Quark's like, I'm gonna kill Pariah because he killed my universe, but that's not end up being true. Uncle Sam, who of the Freedom Fighters, ends up stopping it. And then everybody starts talking amongst themselves in the different universes. Earth 3 Luthor makes a portal, and Pariah leads the team that they put together, who, everybody who was being told what was going on, put all the team together, send them through this rift. They go to Anti-Monitor's base. Psycho Pirate can't get it up. Because
Psycho Beta buck down. All right, hold that thought, Roddy. I just wanted to enter a couple of quick notes on this. So the home base of the Anti-Monitor, and we all know that at least the first several issues of Infinity Gauntlet and Crisis on Infinite Earths shared an artist, that is George Perez. So when you look at that stone kind of floating island base that the Anti-Monitor has, it is very reminiscent of the backgrounds in Infinity Gauntlet that Thanos is occupying with Mephisto. It's so very similar. It's very reminiscent. So as someone who had never read this up until this point, literally up until today, and sees this for the first time, it's not shocking. It's just kind of like a nice homage. Like you can see the artist homaging himself.
Right.
It's hard to copy. It's not copying if it's your own work. You know.
So funny you should mention that, because I did have that in my notes, but I skipped that part because I basically said they reached Thanos' lair.
Oh yes.
So because I also noticed that. So we keep going. The group that is there talk about the impending battle, of course, as they tend to do. But then the Anti-Monitor has his base attack, and a bunch of stone creatures attacks them. They have trouble getting through, but they finally do. Lady Quark keeps calling her dead husband for some reason, because that's kind of how they wrote women at the time, weirdly enough. Supergirl comes up with a great idea, which starts that whole ball rolling. Dr. Light starts to question her involvement in everything, because she was talking to Pariah about, well, we all know what, your involvement in other things is, and Leela and Harpagers and everybody else's, and Earth 3 Luthor, but what is mine? But she got stopped short. She and Superman, Earth 1 Superman, I'm just going to start just calling him Supes 1, because he's from Earth 1. Finds Anti-Monitor's vibrating machine. Superman gets attacked, and Supergirl comes in comes flying in to save the day. She basically takes down Anti-Monitor to a point, breaks his armor up. But then, as things start to do, they go another way, because Supergirl dies in the midst of fighting Anti-Monitor, but she ends up breaking the machine at the same time, because she lost focus and looked back at Dr. Light trying to save Superman for some strange reason, and she got hit and died. Superman starts yelling. Let's see what happens. Oh yeah, and Prime Earth Supes 1 gets mad. Earth's 2 Superman, I'm gonna start calling him Supes 2. Supes 2 calms him down, and then the Earth starts merging, and then they go into eulogizing Supergirl, and this when we find out her name was Linda Lee, or at least her pseudonym was Linda Lee. Anything?
Right. So that's basically issue number 7. Thoughts, gentlemen?
Star Trek 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, she just goes in, and all the radiation and the anti-universe rays and whatever, and she's just pounding and pounding and pounding, and she's ripping the machine apart, and just, you can see that she's just getting bathed in the radiation, and she's just like keeps punching and punching and punching and punching. Like, she is so hardcore in this. I love this issue, even though it killed her and it sucked, and I really like the character. This is one of those stories where it's just like, yeah, it's like, look at her go. She's just like going, and just, she doesn't care anymore. She's going to die, but she's going to be the hero, and she's just going all out. And I loved how the character was in this book.
I agree with that. The funny part about this is not the, yes, folks, if you mentioned last week, this is the second Star Trek reference, Star Trek 2 specifically reference of this here conversation. Which actually, and I said at the time, DC owned the license had the license to Star Trek movies. So coincidence? I think not.
This is how what a superhero death issue should be.
Yeah.
I think this is I mean, even though I don't, when I first read this issue, I had no ties to the character. I mean, I felt the emotional resonance in the battle. So, I mean, I wish the cover didn't spoil what happened, even though it's an iconic cover. You could, even if you weren't a fan of Supergirl, I mean, you felt the loss at the end, and I think that's a testament to the Wolfman Perez team.
Well, also though, at the time, you didn't have spoilers. You didn't have everybody leaking information on the internet and stuff like that. So, I mean, you would see it on the cover. You knew it was going to happen, but that was also one of those ways to like attract people to pick it up from the newsstand, because they're going to walk by. Maybe you haven't read a comic in 20 years since you were a kid, but you walk by and you see Superman weeping holding Supergirl, and you're like, maybe I'm going to pick that up.
Yep.
So,
no, that's important. That's a really important point. It was on the newsstand, right? Literally on the newsstand.
Cool.
Agreed.
Yeah, like, I dare say potential click of the week, if there was one.
Right.
So we move on to issue 8, which is called
A Flash of the Lightning. So, kind of piggybacking on what at Matt Wang 97 mentioned earlier, there is something that happens in this issue that's not necessarily spoiled by the cover. The cover does have the Flash and Psycho Disco Alpha Beta Pirate on the cover. So we come to issue 8 with the Flash being held captive in like a gelatin that keeps him immobile for now, with Psycho Pirate basically ruminating about how this could all go very bad, because they thought they saw the Anti-Monitor get killed, but spoiler alert, Anti-Monitor emerges in reformed armor after his battle with Supergirl. We have a little bit of an interlude with Apocalypse and Darkseid and Desaad basically saying why they're not really involved in this at all. Basically, they're all in hiding because they're not looking to take on the forces of either the Anti-Monitor or the Monitor. They're just trying to stay out of sight so that they'll be able to pick up the pieces in the future. We find out that the Guardians of Oa had been left in stasis, or had been captured and left in stasis, have been freed, and now the Green Lanterns have access to the power within the main power battery of Oa, and now they're back in the fight. The 5 Earths are basically still in this kind of weird holding pattern. They are merged at what are called warp points, I believe it is, but they are not completely merged together, so that they are basically interfacing with each other at certain points on their surfaces. So we're in the 30th century in one interlude with the Legion of Superheroes monitoring the partially merged 5 Earths. In the 20th century, Firestorm and Vixen and Firehawk are together. They're trying to do something about Red Tornado, and they try to get Professor T.O. Morrow to help, but that doesn't exactly work. Why? Because we find out that the villains are looking to do their own kind of villain assemble thing. But that's a little further down the line. Now that the initial crisis is over, this is sort of a break in the action. The worlds are basically briefed on what is actually happening through government. Heaven forbid that government actually tries to work and tells everyone what the hell is going on. We have, the heroes trying to coordinate their efforts. Meanwhile, back on Quard, the Anti-Monitor is building an antimatter ray gun, a giant antimatter gun. The Flash escapes from his gelatin prison and uses the Psycho Pirate to influence the weaponeers of Quard to attack the Anti-Monitor, basically brainwashing them into chanting death to the Monitor, actually, not to the Anti-Monitor, and to unleash their lightning bolts on the Anti-Monitor. This is the part of Crisis that I just never really understood, because it's one thing to have the big bad going one-on-one against Supergirl and having something bad, the tragic demise of Supergirl happen. But in this case, we have the Flash taking down this antimatter gun by running really fast in a circle. And we understand the pseudoscience behind it and why it's affecting the Flash, because it's essentially an antimatter blob or an antimatter engine, and it's drawing energy from him as he's trying to refocus the energy and destroy the cannon itself. But I never really understood what he was trying to accomplish by running around fast in a circle.
It's Superman the movie.
I know, but that was about turning back time. He was Cher before Cher sang that song.
I mean, kind of same difference, but yeah.
Okay, so from a couple things, when they're the Earths are coming together, those warp points, they're not only where the universes are fusing together, but it's also causing time to fuse together.
Right. So
past, present, and future are all merging at those points as well. So you have the different universes coming together, physically, but then also time itself is collapsing in those points. Where Flash is at, where the gun is, it's collecting that antimatter. Okay, so basically, I have to back up a little bit, because
where's your chart?
The way it worked is that you had multiple positive matter universes, right? You had the infinite multiverse, but you only had one antimatter universe. And so what the Anti-Monitor is doing is he's destroying the positive matter universes in order to convert that energy to antimatter and expand the antimatter universe.
And he can gain power thereby gain power for himself.
So he's absorbing that antimatter energy that's building up from all of these other universes in order to create this death ray that's going to punch through into the positive universe and push antimatter energy everywhere and collapse all those universes, kill everybody, and then it's just antimatter universe. There's no more positive matter universe. But the energy that's converting is unstable. So it's becoming antimatter energy, but it's not. It's like in flux, like it's not perfect yet. And part of that is because of the way the universes are in like this stasis where they haven't quite collapsed, but they're kind of there. So it's like he's kind of pulling this energy there, but it's not really the antimatter yet because it hasn't quite collapsed. And so this machine is converting it, refining it, as well as bringing it to a focus so that he can blast it through. So what Flash is doing is basically destabilizing the whole thing. So the science of it is, as it's being like refined and cleaned and turned into pure antimatter energy, he's basically running the machine the opposite direction. He's trying to get the momentum going the other way. So suddenly you have all this positive matter in the antimatter universe, which then causes it to fold upon itself and explode and whatever. But because Flash goes so fast, he's fighting against it and goes so fast, then he starts to go backwards in time. The problem is that as he's like pulled through the time stream, he's in the antimatter universe. So there's really nowhere for him to go because he doesn't belong in that universe. He doesn't exist. And so the energy just kind of depletes out of him because there's no spot for it to go. So that's basically the pseudoscience behind that whole thing. And I don't know that because there was some other company that did a Crisis on Infinite Earths companion that was like 2 issues that went through and broke down all the different universes, broke down the different characters, broke down what publishing companies they came from, and explained a bunch of this stuff. And I want to say it was like Blackstone Publishing or some. It was like Sal Brodsky company, one of his companies, I think it was. And they did a 2-issue companion thing, and they did, a bunch of interviews with people and whatever, and they broke it down. And so that's where that comes from.
All right.
Well,
Comics.
Can I ask you guys one question? So I think the other thing to think about that Agent 70 brought up is, basically why did Barry Allen go out like that, right? Like, and I'm just trying to remember my history, but if I remember correctly, like this was around the trial of the Flash, right? Like he had killed, he had killed Reverse Flash, right? And in some ways, I felt like DC editorial didn't know what to do with him anymore, right? So this was kind of him going out in a blaze of glory, right? Leaving the way for, spoiler alert, Wally West to take over. Sorry, it's a 20-year spoiler alert. If you didn't know Wally West was the Flash, then I don't know why you're listening to the show. But so it felt like this was a way to send off Barry Allen in a very heroic way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because in fact they referenced a couple of different times, and I think once again coming up about the trial of the Flash. So, and even Barry in this issue says when he was threatening Psycho Pirate about that, he was like, "Look, I've been accused of murder first. I mean already, but ain't no reason why I couldn't do it again, or do it now." But something else I was going to actually bring up. But
I was about to say, just let me wrap with the final splash page of the issue, which is of the Spectre. Like the DC, the literal hand of God in the DC universe. The Spectre now is about to literally raise hell because he senses the disruption finally and is about to step forward. So.
That's what it was. So during the process of Barry going backwards, we see flashes of glimpses of him that we've seen in previous issues, in the first couple of issues of the series, because you see him showing up before Batman and the Joker, and a couple of other times that he's shown up since then. So that's pretty much sets up where that came from.
Sure.
So now we can, if there's nothing
I was about to
else,
say a shout out to Cher.
Oh no! Don't do it.
See, we had to because she was prescient. This actually, this story was prescient. They predicted the song, but anyway.
Issue number 9, Warzone. So we start back on Oa, and the Guardians already messing up because a group of Guardians gave Guy Gardner a ring.
The second time.
The second time, exactly. So, and there was like, look, we need evil to be stamped out, so you're the guy for this. And then they get attacked by the wave that is going to be sweeping through from whatever explosion it was, or whatever happened last issue. Now that I think about it, well, it was from the explosion of the machine.
Yeah, the antimatter cannon.
Yeah. So that wave is going on, and that's going to be a thing. Oa gets attacked first. The one Guardian that's left is like, Avengers! And they sends Guy Gardner on his way. Excuse me. And then that goes off into Green Lantern. So there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going off into other series. It's like, hey, that's from here on in. Meanwhile, Brainiac finishes his villain Pokemon collection with Tio Maro. Earth 2 Luthor gets sent packing, challenging Earth 1 Luthor's field lead. You see Starfire, Nightwing, and Jericho heading to Tamaran for some reason that you find out in New Teen Titans, but they don't know why. We don't either because it has nothing to do with what's going on here right now. Starts to get news reports from these warp zones that we're just talking about, and then you see other members of the Teen Titans and Titans talking to each other. Wonder Girl's looking for her husband. Firehawk goes with her. The others stay around to kind of to police the area. Basically, we see cut to Sergeant Rock, and back in 1944, 42, who ended up seeing the wave. And if you're watching the video, you can see the cover. So then from here on, we see a villainous takeover of all three Earths, thanks to Brainiac and Luthor. Meanwhile, Leela, Harbinger, Pariah are still addressing the UN for this. But then Pariah.
I say I lost sound.
Wait, what happened?
Roddy.
Yes.
Roddy, your sound dropped out. So I hear Roddy now, here and there. But I just wanted to note while Roddy's recovering his sound that the cover for issue number 9 is one of those great George Perez, group shots. In this case, it's a group of the villains that have been gathered by Brainiac and Lex Luthor, and it's one of those shots where you would need like a guide to who's in there if you're not familiar with the DC universe at this time. Obviously the really recognizable ones are up front, but I'm like, wait a second, who is that snake person on the bottom? Is that Copperhead? I'm not sure who that is. Under Sinestro?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just talking about the cover to issue number 9. Right. I put the question to the panel. Who is that character, the snake-looking character that is...
That's Cobra.
Oh, Cobra. Okay, thank you.
It's Cobra with a K.
Yeah. I see. Well, what I was going to add, my main comment to this, other than the fact that it's a great George Perez group shot, obviously one of his fortes as an artist, is that for someone like me who has a less than strong sense of recognition for these characters, I would need a guide to help me figure out who's on this cover. There's so many characters that I don't recognize.
Oh, you can name most of these.
I can name a lot, but not. I would say more. I would say the majority, but not a plurality. I could not name all of them. There's definitely a few here that are in definite blind spots of my knowledge.
Okay, so here I found the book I was talking about a minute ago. It's right here, the official Crisis on Infinite Earths Index.
Okay,
and it's from the Independent Comics Group, and so this was another company that I don't know how they got the rights or whatever, but they were able to publish, I believe it was 2 issues, 1 and 2, that they broke down all the character appearances. So they actually have a section where you can go and like pull up the cover and it'll have the outlines of everybody with like a little number.
Yeah.
So you can look through it and be like, oh, number 43, who's number 43? And then go through the list and figure out who number 43 was. And then they talked about all the different Earths and where the different characters came from. So I was like, Charlton Comics? What the heck is a Charlton comic? I've never heard of that before, and I could go look up that stuff. So,
sure.
And trust me, like when I worked in a comic shop in the mid 90s, like I bought every Crisis crossover and tie-in. And like that was my passion there for a while, was going to cons and buying every single tie-in and every single, crossover for this series. So yeah, and I would pore over these things and figure out who every single, and it's weird because Perez, as much as he likes to draw characters, he would also do like group shots where he would do silhouettes in the background and not really put in a lot of detail on some of the characters. He might just put like a domino eye mask or a turban on somebody's head or something. And then the colorist would go in and just be like, well, I don't know who that is. So the colorist would just kind of randomly, throw some colors on there. And then it's like, well, who is that guy? Well, that guy is really nobody who ever existed, but we'll make somebody up. So now they're going to go like, that's Robin from Earth 19, just like it, we don't know, but we'll make something up here. So it works. Gotcha. And so there was a lot of that stuff going on too.
Gotcha. I was about to say something about the cover that I think Penguin is on the cover, but I don't think he ever actually does anything or shows up. From what I remember seeing. But regardless,
I like how that's the guy you're drawn to
I
in the
mean,
back.
hey, you know,
That-
he's like right there up top. Oh, and also
Yeah.
this cover is kind of, I guess, kind of, you know, influences a cover. You can almost say it influences a cover from Secret Wars. In fact,
No,
I think
way around.
Huh?
It's the other way around. Remember, Secret Wars predates this.
Oh fuck, that is right. You're right.
Yeah,
So-
that Zek cover, I think that that Roddy may be thinking of. That Zek cover, that timeless cover to #1, predates this by at least a year or two.
Well, I was also thinking about that cover that wasn't used that we talked about last week.
Oh, right.
With all the villains.
Right.
Yeah. But that's the one I was actually talking about. But yeah. So anyway, to round this issue out, like I said, the villains start taking over Earth, over 3 Earths. We already talked about what they're doing at the UN. We see some cuts to some other people, like the Creeper and Steve Savage, whoever the heck that is. I think that's who it was. We see the heroes try to break through barriers to Earths 2 and 4. Layla and Jay Garrett goes to get Wally West, who apparently was in retirement, and they break out the cosmic treadmill. And Jay and Wally revs it up, and all of the heroes prepare to go off on a merry journey. Then we get Brainiac and Luthor's war report, which ends in Simon attacking and destroying, or seemingly destroying, Brainiac and attacking Luthor. And that's the end of that issue.
Right. So, any more thoughts on this issue, gentlemen, before we move on?
I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to separate, like what happened in which issue in my head.
Is this the issue? Is this the issue where Aquagirl dies?
I believe that is next issue.
Yeah, next issue. Next issue. I was just about to talk about it.
Yeah.
Sorry, spoiler.
Sorry.
No,
buddy. It's all good.
It's okay. That's
It's okay.
what we are working off of notes and summaries, ladies and gentlemen. So we do have reference handy.
And speaking of reference, let's go to issue number 10, which is called
Death at the Dawn of Time. So we pick up right where we left off in issue number 9, which is that Brainiac is destroyed, or is he, by Simon. And we get a parallel retrospective being told on the bottom of every page, entitled The Monitor Tapes. So as we have the main Crisis on Infinite Earth story being told, like on the upper, let's say like 8/10 of the page, the bottom 2/10 are some panels that are being told from the point of view of Layla, who is recounting what's in the Monitor's review of the DC history up until that point. So we find that minor spoiler alert, that Brainiac is not dead because his ship was still alive. So he was in his ship, biding his time, actually observing Simon trying to be treacherous, and basically takes out Simon by blowing his freaking brains out, literally. We get some of the after effects of the villain battles on the Earths that have been overtaken so far. The 3 out of the 5 remaining Earths that have been successfully overrun by the villains. What happened? What Matt Wang 97 was just referring to? What happened to Tula? Actually did happen in the last issue, but she survives into this issue, but does in fact bite the big one. So we get some heroes making headway against the villains that had taken over those 3 worlds. Some of the hero forces had been taken captive, but then reinforcements arrived to break them free. We get to a point where the Spectre appears and yells, "Stop!" and pushes and tries to put a hold on everything that's happening. The heroes and the villains realize that they're going to have to work together to put a stop to what's happening. I think it's the last issue that we first see Superboy from Earth Prime make his awful appearance. Is it the last issue?
I think that's
definitely
11.
see him in this issue.
I think
No,
that's
we
11.
see him in this issue. He's in this issue. I'm looking at it right now.
Hmm.
And we all know from was it Final Crisis where he rears his head again in the recent past? We get
Infinite Crisis.
Infinite Crisis. Sorry, Superboy Earth Prime.
And he shows up. He actually shows up in a very recent DC book.
Right. So.
Right, but he shows up in the Anti-Monitor's armor in Infinite Crisis.
That's it. I couldn't remember. When I read Infinite Crisis, as always, we have to keep in mind that this is my first time going through Crisis. So when everyone had all this vitriol about Earth Prime Superboy in those comics, I was like, who is this guy? So I'm starting to get more background on the character and just see how he relates to the very first Crisis story and see how that relates going forward.
Yeah, okay, so here's the problem with Earth Prime Superboy. Earth Prime is supposed to be our Earth. So there had been stories in the past where the Justice League broke down the barrier. Several times they jumped all over in these crisis stories in the Justice League comics. But they did one where they accidentally brought over, I think it was Elliot S. Maggin, who was a longtime writer for DC, and he was brought from Earth Prime into the DC universe. And when he appeared in the DC universe, he suddenly realized that he had his writer powers, and so he had the ability to re-warp reality because he was the writer. And it was the first time, later on, they did a whole thing with Animal Man and did all that stuff and whatever, but he was like the big villain. He lost who he was and whatever, and he was overcome with the power, and he eventually got sent back. And they did panels of Julius Schwartz and Maggin and somebody else, I forget who else, like sitting in the offices at DC Comics talking about the crazy comic story, whatever. And it was like this weird meta thing where you were seeing the actual people who work on the comics in Earth Prime talking about the comics of the DC universe. And so Prime is our universe. So they did this Crisis crossover in DC Comics Presents where you have Earth Prime, regular normal Earth, and they're talking about this kid. Oh, there's this kid named Clark Kent. And they're like, well, that's weird. That's funny. Ha ha ha. There's a kid named Clark Kent. And then suddenly he gets Superboy powers. And then Earth Prime is destroyed. And he flies off into the whatever. And then he appears in this book. And it's like, well, wait a minute. I'm on Earth Prime. We're still here. Like, this is like, what? And so that was the one point in the story that a lot of people like really hated, because it's like, that's no, like right. Earth Prime is supposed to be, that's why it's Prime. It's the untouchable, our universe. You can't do that. And so, a lot of people were just like, I don't like this character. And then they shunted him off, but then later on they brought him back, and it's just like,
yep,
not this guy.
Right.
So they did mention that in the story about that. Sorry, they mentioned that in the story about that story that you were just talking about from DC Comics Presents, and because they footnoted when Superboy Prime comes in, and I think they've been designating quote unquote Earth Prime as Earth 1. I guess I'm not sure. This whole thing was kind of weird.
Different.
No, Earth Prime is our Earth. Earth 1 is the DC Comics of the Silver Age, and then Earth 2 was DC Comics of the Golden Age.
Because that was the whole thing that was kind of confusing for me, who's never read this before and not knowing that much about, I know DC's history is kind of bonkers, but it was like, well, wait a minute. Earth Prime is destroyed because Superboy comes in here, and I kind of thought that way was what you were saying, but I was like, well, wait, but these heroes that we supposedly know from the DC universe, here was from supposedly from this one Earth, and I'm like, well, wait, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
Oh.
So this is the one part of the story I'm not super happy with.
Hmm.
By the way, John Ostrander killed off the writer of Suicide Squad. Random note.
Okay, cool. All right, so it's it's just one of those things where you see the character pop up. Like I said, from my perspective, I'm like, oh, so this is his relation to the whole crisis chain of stories. Just getting back to the events of this issue, so the heroes and the villains figure out they have to team up. And they get together to travel back into time. Again, I'm not going to pull up Cher, but we all know what they're trying to do. They're traveling to two specific points in time to try to stop what's happening. One is the dawn of time, and one is the creation of the break between the antimatter and the matter, the positive matter universe on Oa, and they get all of the electrical and the magnetic heroes and villains to put their powers together and power their time machines, their transport machines. And in the interim, as I mentioned earlier, we find out that Tula is now dead. And when they reach the respective points in time, they find that, or at least they find at the dawn of time, that the anti-monitor is there waiting for them with Pariah. And Pariah, as we all know, is crying. So for those of you who were with us last week, I don't know if PCN_Dirt listened to last week's show, but this is something that Roddykat brought up. I know Matt Wang 97 was here with us. Pariah is again crying, as he is wont to do, and he's there with the anti-monitor at the beginning of time. Meanwhile, on Quard, some villain groups are trying to get to Krona, he of the antagonist of JLA Avengers. Again, as I mentioned last week, it's interesting for me to see why Krona is so important to the DC universe continuity and the history. Because I definitely read JLA Avengers not knowing who he was. I had to Google who the character was, so I see now why the character played such a role, played such a major role in DC history. So we get the two forces trying to take out the villains at these, or try to prevent the events from changing history at these 2 points in history. So the villains are at Quard, the heroes are at the beginning of time, and we get the Spectre basically literally saying, I'm going to send you back to hell. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Some pretty dramatic looking artwork from Perez, basically putting the anti-monitor in his place, and we get to the end of this issue, which kind of leaves everyone on a real cliffhanger. We don't know what the results of these battles have been, and we will find out in the next issue.
Thoughts, folks?
Here's the issue. It's actually Carrie Bates was the writer who becomes the villain, and Elliot S. Magan goes to try to stop him. So he's the other writer that goes in to try to rescue him. But this is 1975. And Flash had already made an appearance on Earth Prime at this point. So the idea of Earth Prime being normal Earth is something that's, was around for at least a decade or so at this point.
It's definitely as old as myself and at Matt Wang 97.
But as far as the story goes on this one, I don't know. I kind of struggle with the, like, hey, bad guys, we all have to work together. And they all go, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It was just like, I remember reading through it and just being like, well, is there a crossover here? Did I miss something? Like, was there some other point where they explained this? And nope, it was just pretty much just like, yeah, hey, everybody, we got to work together or else the world's doomed. And they're like, yeah, all right, cool. And so then they all started working together. And it was just, I don't know, seemed a little out of place to me there.
I think the funny part for this issue for me was Uncle Sam, from Freedom Fighters, was like, "Hey, wait a minute! Before we do all this thing, he gives his best Captain America speech,
Yeah.
and then Luthor or somebody said was like, yeah, he's a cornball, or whatever. And Luthor was like, yeah, he's a cornball, but he's right, and like, okay,
Well, but that's part of his power. I
right,
mean, that's part of Uncle Sam's power is that he has the ability to, when he speaks, he builds up everyone else in the group. It's kind of like a D&D power. There's characters who are like that.
great,
Right,
he's
like
got
a bard.
shout.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Right.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
There
I
you go,
can't
folks.
remember the whatchamacallit. I can't remember the ability. I'm trying to remember the ability. As soon as PCN_third and Matt Wang 97 started talking about
I'm
it, I
actually
started
sitting
to
here trying to think of it
get like
myself.
visual flashbacks to character sheets.
Yeah, I know. That's
Yeah.
why I said D&D, because I couldn't remember the name of it myself. So
It's Fascinate, right? Charm Person, Fascinate. It's the Bard ability, second edition, probably not first, maybe third edition too.
I'm sure
Yeah.
there is some D&D inclined person out there who will give us the answer to that question at some point later in the in time, if not in the chat, which I don't see anybody right now. So, I mean anything right now, because somebody would have been screaming that. So therefore, we will move on, if there is anything else, to issue number 11, called Aftershock, and I will just go ahead and briefly say that. Supes 2 wakes up on Earth 1, as we end up finding out, and he goes to work at the Daily Planet like he tends to do, but he thinks but he goes into his office, which is not his office, is actually Perry White's office, who actually comes in and is like, "What the hell are you doing here, Kent?" And then he comes, and then the Earth 2 super, and he's also like, "Well, wait, I don't know what's going on," or whatever. Then he figures out that, okay, I must be on Earth 2, and then the Clark Kent of Earth 2 comes in. I was like, "Oh no, this is my uncle." He thought he was, I told him I was an editor or whatever the case may be, and they just kind of
swap that though.
What's that?
They're on. He thinks he's the Earth 2 Superman. Thinks he's on Earth 1.
Okay. Oh, dang it. Okay.
Old man Superman is Earth 2.
Yes. You're right, and I do have that in my notes. But what am I even reading here? So yeah, that happens, and then they go off and it's like, well, they know each other, and then they go see Jay Garrick, who knows them, but Joan, his wife, does not know them. But what we could end up coming to find out that all of the heroes know each other because of what happened, but no one else outside of that does. So we also come to find out that everybody's not on their right Earths. And then Jay, Wally, and the two Supes go and hop on the cosmic treadmill and take a trip to the void, which they find out that there is no multiverse anymore. And Superman 2 tries to kill himself, and Supes 1 is like, "Come back here, you're not going anywhere." They all go back to where they were, and the treadmill breaks, rip treadmill. Then we cut to Brainiac being out of commission, and all the heroes. Well, there was a group of folks on Brainiac's ship, and they're trying to figure out what happened to Brainiac and what have you. But then we cut to Titan's Tower, where a whole bunch of the heroes are meeting because, like I said, everybody knows each other, but everybody's out of their place, and the world around them they don't know, and there are people kind of talking and trying to come to grips about the fact that either they don't exist or their world is not there, or whatever the case may be. They meet up with Harbinger at the tower, who says that, hey, I brought her back here, and apparently she got because of what happened, she got her powers back. And that she tells that everybody who was at the dawn of time was not affected, so therefore that's why they don't have a universe anymore. Something like that. Then the Spectre is found by some people. I'm Dead Man, a couple other people, and then Anti-Monitor appears, welcoming folks to his Anti-Monitor universe. Let's see. There is
The
a little bit more.
montage issue.
Yes. Let's see. Pick up. Oh yeah, there's a whole deal with Lois and Superman 2. Rep Hunter's time vehicle comes out of the time stream with forgotten heroes in it. I don't know who they are. They also notice that time has reset itself. They get, oh yeah, that's right, because this is when that's what the whole thing with Brainiac, and Dolphin for some reason is there, who I still don't know who that is.
How do you know Dolphin? She's like Animal Man's like one of her Animal Man's friends. She has the powers of a dolphin.
Right? Hey, like
She dated Aquaman, and then she had a kid with Tempest.
Oh, God bless you guys for knowing this.
Yeah, I was about to say it's refreshing to have such DC knowledgeable folks in here, even though DC's history is bonkers, like I continue to say.
I wanted to add
Go ahead.
about forgive it'll. I was a fan of Helena, the Huntress, the original. I always was attracted to thigh-high boots.
You're kind of
That she
breaking
had-
out.
Feed, back. Feed, back.
Yeah, it's just temporary. We just have to work through it. It's just happened over the last several calls.
I think all the sound coming to your desktop is looping back through.
There's nothing I can do about it. See, it just went away. All I did was wait.
Weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been happening the last couple of weeks. We still haven't figured that out yet.
Okay, so what were you talking about? You were attracted to the Huntress? Is that what you were saying?
The original Helena Bertinelli design, those thigh-high boots. Get out of here, man. That was awesome. When I was a kid, oh, you kidding me? I was just like, wait, that Huntress design doesn't exist anymore?
No, but she was Helena Wayne, right? And Earth 2 Huntress was Helena Wayne, right? The daughter of Batman and Selena Kyle.
Right.
And she marries Dick Grayson, right?
Is that what the story was? I don't remember.
Because Batman of Earth 2 died, was killed.
Yeah, but I don't know. Did she marry Dick Grayson? I don't remember that.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just
right. But like I said, that design was awesome. So when I see it here, and I think you're right. I think she was Helena Wayne because she comes out as the daughter of Bruce Wayne and somebody.
Selena Kyle.
Is it? Oh, okay. So it is Catwoman. Okay. So then we have this particular version of the Huntress, and basically she, just like Soups 2, is going on about, oh, my reality doesn't exist anymore. I don't belong here. Blah blah blah. Yakety schmackety. Basically, we get some existential crises for all these characters. Like, I don't exist anymore. I have nothing to live for. And that's essentially where we find ourselves at the end of the issue, because it's the Anti-Monitor rearing his ugly head yet again.
Yeah, this is like the false ending. Like this is that Friday the 13th where Jason's dead and everyone's like picking up the pieces and they're trying to figure out like, okay, well, now we just got to get out of here. We got to survive. And then suddenly, boom, the door blasts open and there he is coming back through. It's like, Anti-Monitor's dead. Something's wrong with the universe. We're going to figure this out. We just got to move forward and move on. And then suddenly, boom, Anti-Monitor's not dead. Big battle, one final battle to come.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that gets us to the giant final issue spectacular of Crisis on Infinite Earths, issue number 12. The title of this story is Final Crisis. Where have we heard that one again since? We open with a splash page with a bunch of heroes that, if I weren't doing this podcast over the last several years, I wouldn't even recognize like two of them. There's Dolphin, who we were just referring to. There's Rip Hunter. I'm like, who? Animal Man. I sort of remember him from the 80s and 90s. The Atomic Knight, Nuclear Warrior Without Peer. Adam Strange is the only one that I recognize, the savior of Planet Ron, and Captain Comet, mutant born 100,000 years before his time. So, we open with this splash page of not exactly, heralded heroes that we were referring to in the last issue, and they find Brainiac kind of hanging out in stasis mode in space. Meanwhile, on Earth, the Soups 1 and Soups 2 are confronting the Anti-Monitor, and he is making his presence felt all around the world. The heroes gather in one of my favorite DC locales, Titan's Tower, and they basically meet there to figure out what their next, their next courses of action are. At this point, Dr. Light is going to be making some sort of, having some sort of effect. The darkness, the minions of the Anti-Monitor are attacking the Earth, and basically everyone has to put, the heroes and the villains have to put their quarrels aside and get together and try to face down all of these shadows. It's mostly the heroes. I think the villains are kind of all left without. They're left not knowing what's happening. I don't. I'm flipping through this, like, I don't really see too many villains helping out.
Right.
Correct me if I'm mistaken, but we get some scenes. We finally see Darkseid again. He's just hanging out in space under cloak, not trying to get in between the combatants. Let's see here. Yeah, that's where Brainiac's ship goes into stationary orbit over Apocalypse. So the heroes are still battling the shadow demons. The Dove is slain by a shadow being as his brother watches in horror. In Dr. Fate's Salem Tower, the magically powered heroes have gathered to pool their sorcerous might. The Earth 2, Green Lantern, and Dr. Occult form the nexus of their energy. On the antimatter world of Quard, Harbinger and the heroes arrive at the Anti-Monitor's old headquarters, and let's see. They suddenly see an image of the Flash, who is traveling through time, like I said, turning back time. This is, I guess, the last one Barry cast before his death. Wally follows the image and runs into the Psycho Pirate and the Barry Allen Flash costume that is left behind. At this point, Pariah comes. He's probably about to break out into tears, but we get a big splash page where the Anti-Monitor appears and proclaims, "This is the day the universe dies." Forgive me, there is a lot of stuff happening in as I flip. There's people who are dealing with the after effects on Earth. There's stuff going on in Atlantis as Aquaman leads his underwater legions against the shadows. This is where Lori Lamaris dies. So Lori Lamaris saves a trapped Mira with a force beam. A demon closes in on her and kills Lori Lamaris. I remember reading Lori Lamaris in reprints of Superman stories, like Earth 2 Superman stories in black and white reprints as a kid.
How do you know who she is and not know who Dolphin is? So
well, like I said, I had
because she was a Superman character, not an Aquaman character.
Right, and I had these black and white reprints as a kid in like a digest form. So let's see here. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on Earth. We get the green. No, that's magic. That's not Green Lantern stuff. So back on Quard. We get what I guess is the main battle of the heroes against the Anti-Monitor. Dr. Light absorbs the energy of one of the binary suns they are between, and the Anti-Monitor feels his power draining away. All right, so she's being useful. So that's what's happening here. I'm reading our cliff notes for this. So let's see here. Dr. Light blasts the Anti-Monitor with the energy of a sun. I think that punches a hole in him. Yep, that punches a hole in him. I don't know if this is where the story. Nope, story's not ending yet. Nope. See, I told you. Just like PCN_Dirt mentioned, that was another false ending. We get the Anti-Monitor with a big hole in his chest after Dr. Light blasts them with the power of a sun. And I think this is where one version of Wonder Woman bites the bullet. She gets blasted by the Anti-Monitor. I'm looking to see which version of Wonder Woman this is.
It's the Earth 2, the old lady.
The old lady. So that's how they get rid of the old lady. Okay. That's so.
But she comes back.
I know. So
But Alex Luthor has used his power to open the portal to allow everybody to return back to the normal universe when they thought the Anti-Monitor was destroyed.
Right.
So everybody starts to go back through, and then that's when he does that Jason Voorhees, reach out and grab the ankle and like, no, I'm not dead yet. And so everybody has already pretty much left at that point. And so you just have a couple Supermen and Lady Quark left there. And Old Man Superman's like, I've got nothing left to live for. I'm going to beat the crap out of them. You guys go back to safety. And they don't want to leave him there, so he knocks them both out. And Superboy tells Superboy to take them back to where it's safe. And he goes to take on the Anti-Monitor and finish him off once and for all. And he's basically, because his Lois is gone, he's got nothing else to live for, so he's just going to beat the crap out of this guy and destroy him. And if he gets locked in the universe with him, then so be it.
Got it. All right. And Superboy Prime raises his ugly head again. I'm just flipping through this now because I just don't know this that well. There's so much stuff going on. Wow. Yeah, so as PCN underscore Dirt mentioned, there is a confrontation between Earth 2 Superman and the Anti-Monitor in this this kind of limbo region to try to trap the Anti-Monitor in the antimatter universe. And
so one of the things that we find out at this point is that Darkseid, through whatever special TV he has, he's able to see everything through Alexander Luthor's eyes. So he's watching everything that's going on with the Anti-Monitor in the Anti-Monitor universe, and he goes, you know what, this dude keeps getting back up, this dude keeps coming, they can't stop him, so since I can see through his eyes, I'm going to shoot a blast of my anti-life equation power through the TV, through Alexander Luthor's eyes, and hit Anti-Monitor with it, and that's the blast, boom, that finishes him off, supposedly once and for all. And Darkseid's only willing to do this because he knows that if the Anti-Monitor escapes, then everything else is going to crumble, and eventually he'll come for Apocalypse. And so in order to save his own dominion, he's willing to join in the fight.
got it. Got it. Now I understand that. Okay. All right.
So then Old Man Superman, he's pining for Lois, and he's like, I wish, she would have survived. And Alexander Luthor is like, well, actually, she kind of did. And he's like, what are you talking about? And he like opens his chest and out walks Lois Lane.
That's right.
And he's like, basically, I've got a pocket dimension inside of me, and so I just kind of stuffed her in there and kept her safe. And so now she's still alive. And so Superboy and Superman and Lois, they're all, trapped now in the antimatter universe. And the antimatter universe is now collapsing with the death of the Anti-Monitor. And so they just said, you know what? Let's all go inside the pocket universe in my chest. And so then they all just kind of go in, and it curls upon itself and seals itself up, and they're gone. And so that should have been the end of Superboy Prime for all time. Unfortunately, it was not.
Yeah, but we also found out that Wonder Woman that supposedly had died, didn't die. She went back to her original, quote unquote, infancy state as a ball of clay. Let's see what else. We basically found out a whole bunch of stuff that's happened.
Sorry, just one question.
Sure.
Remind me, the post-crisis Wonder Woman was written by George Perez, right?
Right.
Got it.
Well, he did the artwork. Did he write it?
I think he wrote it.
He wrote it.
Right?
He was basically in charge of the reboot.
Like, I remember him doing the artwork for sure.
Yeah, he definitely wrote it.
Yeah, so time reverses itself continuously. The Amazons are returned back to their original state before, Zeus brought the homeless Wonder Woman of Earth 2 and her husband to Steve Trevor to Olympus, where they could live previously. Found the bodies of Robin of Earth 2 and Huntress and Cole were never found. So there was mourning for those people who died. Apparently, Kid Flash's whatever was going on with Kid Flash had been in remission now, and he'd been changed. Oh, this is also, by the way, somewhere in there we found out that Wally found out that Barry had died during the course of all that other stuff that happened during the fight. So he was a little distraught about that. And this is when he was like, "Well, the Flash is still alive because I'm the Flash now." So he becomes the Flash. He's a man now. The great disaster will not exist, but a child will be formed in Command D, whatever that is, adopted by General Horatio Tomorrow of the Planeteers and named Thomas. Jonah Hex will be torn from his era.
Tommy Tomorrow.
Yeah, still a stupid name. Jonah Hex will be torn from his era to fight in the future, which that would explain that ad page that I saw on one of the issues. Wow,
remember that was weird.
Yeah,
that was Keith Giffen in his weird artwork phase doing that one.
Yeah, I was like, what in the world is going on there? But I'm not gonna take the minute to find out. But the Guardians of the Universe must face down the first division in their ranks. Lila concludes her tale. Later, Clark and Pariah ask her for help to help them explore their new homeworld. They leave with her, honoring the memory of their benefactor, the Monitor. And there's some dude in Arkham Asylum talking about he knows what happened to everything with the multiverse. But he's in a rubber.
Psycho Pirate.
Oh, was that? Okay, I wasn't sure. I hadn't seen him out of costume. Oh,
yeah, it's Psycho Pirate, and he returns in Animal Man in Grant. I think it was Grant Morrison, right?
Yep, it was Grant Morrison and Brian Boland was doing the covers.
Yeah.
Was it Steve Pugh?
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's been that's going back a ways. I haven't read that in a long time.
It's a great run, and he was, I think, the first writer to revisit the Crisis, right? Because he had Psycho Pirate. He refers to it because he has to fix Animal Man's continuity.
Right. He talks about the different universes and the different histories and everything like that. Yeah.
It's a great run. It's a great run if you Agent 70 and Roddykat if you haven't read it yet.
Okay,
cool. But yeah, that's pretty much where we leave off with the Psycho Pirate mourning anti-pirates in the world he never get, which is weirdly reminiscent of the end of Batman Superman, where when Luthor was in, was it Batman Superman where Luthor was in the what was in the jail?
I try not to remember that.
Yes. Because it was the end of Dawn of Justice where he met with Deathstroke on his yacht.
Oh, Christ. Okay.
No, not that. But no, this was before. I think it was Oh yeah, no, you're right about that. But it was like, okay, yeah. So there was Bat Superman. But anyway, it doesn't matter because that was the weird thing that scene that last page reminded me of, and I don't know why it did. But regardless, that concludes this Crisis on Infinite Earths event with that.
So the thing with the Guardians of Oa, and they're splitting into two, is you had the one group who, of course, ends up becoming the Guardians and starting the Green Lantern Corps. The other group that leaves becomes the Controllers, and the Controllers end up running the Black Stars?
Dark Stars.
Yeah. Dark Stars, right. So Dark Stars actually ended up becoming a series later on in DC Comics in the 90s. But it was one of those things where they set it up here in Crisis thinking, we'll get to that. But then, nobody did. And it took 8 years before someone went, oh, yeah, hey, remember that thing that we set up in Crisis with them going off to do the Dark Stars? Because the Controllers had been something completely different in pre-Crisis continuity. They came from another universe that was destroyed by war, and so they wanted to stop war destroying whatever, in this universe. And here in the new revised post-Crisis continuity, they became the split from the Guardians. And they actually just brought back that whole thing in the new Grant Morrison Green Lantern run, which I've been reading in quarantine, because right before we went into quarantine, I went to one of the shops, and I was like, I read the first issue. I really didn't care for it, but you know what? I'm going to need stuff to read during this whole thing when everything's shut down. So I bought the entire run. I bought the Dark Stars miniseries, and then the 2 or 3 issues of season 2 of that. So I've been reading through all those while we've had this time off, as just to have more stuff to read.
Grant Morrison called it Black Stars, but it was Dark Stars, and then
Okay.
Grant Morrison changed the name. But and it was a fun comic. It was Travis Terrace's like first run, ongoing run.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember that now because they became like the big hot like Wizard Comics collectible thing for a while. And I was like, dude, I'm just a Green Lantern guy. I want to read these things. I don't want to pay $12 to pick up this issue. Yeah, okay, now I remember all that.
And it was written by Michael Jan Freeman, who I met at a con, and I don't know, we trade emails. His email address is the character he created for Dark Stars, Farron Kolos. It's farron@gmail.com.
Okay. I mean, you know what my response to all this is?
Who?
So.
Oh, which by the way, Potter, the Wonder Woman, when George Perez started that series, he actually co-plotted with a writer named Potter, who I have no idea who this person is. Let me see if I can pull this back up. Greg Potter wrote is the script. George Perez is pencils, but Potter and Perez are both listed as co-plotters. So if hey Greg Potter, if you're out there, what else have you been up to lately?
That's funny. All right. So while you DC literate folks are on, talk to us about what has happened in DC's more recent past that has either nullified or altered the effects of Crisis on Infinite Earths now, because that's sort of like the aftermath in the wiki notes that I had that we're kind of going along with online. About what happened with 0 Hour and Hyper Time, Convergence, Infinite Crisis. Obviously, we referred to because of Superboy Prime going on. I know that could be a whole other episode of the Comic Book Chronicles trying to figure out where we stand today. But if you could just give me the nutshell. Or is it too much?
I have a meta answer that's short, like concise.
Sure.
I mean, times have changed, and back then they were trying to attract more readers and trying to make it simpler for people to embrace Superman and understand Batman and understand all these titles. It feels like now with so many other media outlets, the editorial is just kind of like, look, embrace the Superman, Batman you want. Here you go. We're gonna have like, you want Batman as a Joker. Here you go, the Batman who laughs, right? So, they've embraced the version of the character you want. So I think it's better.
Matt, you're coming in and out. You may want to adjust your mic, or at least your headphones.
Okay. So can you hear me okay now?
It's like it gets like really soft.
Yeah, okay now. Oh, how about now?
There we go.
Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that DC is now embracing, like, enjoy the Superman you want, enjoy the Batman. You like old man Superman, great. You like you like the Huntress in the thigh-high boots, great. And they've gone the opposite direction of what, like, the original intention was of Crisis was to make it easier to bring people in, but everyone knows who Superman is. I can go to the bookstore and buy a Superman prose book or something like that. So I just think a concise answer is we've gone the opposite direction. Just enjoy the Batman, Superman, enjoy the characters you want, enjoy what you want. Enjoy, you want to read young adult, Mara, go ahead.
Yeah. So the idea of I agree with a lot of what you're saying here, because the idea of Crisis was they had these characters a long time ago, and then they relaunched the characters and they kind of ignored the old ones, but then they started to kind of bring the old ones back, and then people got kind of confused, and they would pick up an Adventure Comics and see the Justice Society, but then they could pick up Justice League and see kind of, it's like, well, these are some of the same characters, but they're different somehow, and like it didn't really make a lot of sense. And so the idea of Crisis was, we're going to streamline everything, we're going to get rid of all these little threads, we're just going to bring everything together. Like they had just bought the Charlton library of characters, so they were going to bring those in, all this kind of stuff, and just make it all one continuity and make everything work, and it was not going to be any problem. But then writers kept forgetting, and so they would write stories where they would just bring up these things that don't exist anymore. And so then they did 0 Hour, and the idea of 0 Hour is, let's clean this back up again. We got to get rid of these little threads. We got to fix these problems again. And then they got to the point where at Infinite Crisis, they go, we really miss the multiverse. And a lot of people had fun with that. And it really gave us creativity to go tell other stories and do other stuff. And you really can't do a whole lot with like Uncle Sam and the Freedom Fighters just telling World War II stories. But if they're back on Earth X, we can have the Nazis in modern day and they're still fighting them. World War II never ended, that type of stuff. Like we can tell some more interesting things. So Infinite Crisis brought all that stuff back. So, but yeah, now we are at that point where between Black Label is one thing, where you have a lot of those same characters, and sometimes those tie into continuity and sometimes they don't. Sometimes you have stuff going on in Detective and you have stuff going on into Batman, and they don't really tie into each other necessarily, but they somehow both still count. And it's like, well, how does that work? And they go, well, it's comics. It's kind of the same thing that goes on in pro wrestling a lot of times, where it's just like, why would he suddenly turn his back on his friend just because his friend said something to his girlfriend, and now they have a big fight? That doesn't make any sense. And you go, it's just wrestling. It's like, that's just what happens. And so it's the same thing now. They're just like, it's comics. It's just stuff happens. And Marvel's take, on the other hand, had always been, they had that rubber band continuity where it was just like, well, everything that happened, but it didn't happen as long ago. It happened a little more recently. So it's like Captain America, well, he was thawed out, but he was thawed out in the 60s. Well, he was thawed out in the 70s. Well, he was thawed out in the 90s. So now he was thawed out after 9/11. It's like it really changes the character when they rubber band that history. So they did their Secret Wars, which kind of reset history, and they did the whole Crisis thing. And a lot of people are like, yeah, but I mean, it really doesn't matter anymore, So, and also because back then, it was much harder to find back issues. There weren't a lot of reprints. You obviously didn't have digital and all that stuff. You didn't have a Barnes & Noble you can walk into with 40 feet of trade paperbacks, and then you can go, I don't see the one I'm looking for. And they're like, okay, well, we'll order it for you and send it to your house. Or, going onto Amazon and just click, and 3 days later, it's at your front door. So the idea of a lot of that continuity and a lot of that history was kind of a problem for some people trying to get in on this stuff. Personally, I liked all that. I liked the continuity. I liked trying to fix the timelines. I thought it was interesting the way all this stuff would happen. They did a storyline in when John Byrne took over the Superman books. They realized that the Legion of Superheroes had always been inspired by Superboy, but in Post-Crisis there was no Superboy.
Right.
But the Legion of Superheroes still had Superboy. So how do you fix that? So he had to come up with this whole pocket universe, and the Time Trapper created sliced off a little bit of reality and created this pocket universe to keep things in. So every time they would time travel to the past, he was actually shunting them off to the side. And then they revealed that Time Trapper turned out, he was like their greatest villain, but he turned out to be like Cosmic Boy. He became the villain because he needed to be there in order to fix the timeline problems that he knew about, because he had been part of Crisis and all of this kind of stuff. And I always thought that was interesting. I always liked running into this stuff and being like what? That was where? And then you dig through the back issues and you pull one out and you're like, oh, holy crap. Like, I never realized that was a thing. And, they had to fix it and whatever. Like, I always thought that was really neat. So I would say that I've kind of lost, like I understand the idea of saying, hey, just do whatever, and if it doesn't match up 100%, it's whatever. It's the story you want to tell, just tell the story. And that's how the movies have always been that way. The cartoon series have always been that way. They never have to link up with each other. They never have to make sense with each other. And that's part of the reason why the whole DC cinematic universe thing failed, because when that whole started, that was supposed to be 5 movies about Superman, like they had 3 movies about Batman. These are going to be a bunch of movies about Superman, and then suddenly they were like, no, it's got to tie into Suicide Squad, and it's got to tie into Wonder Woman, and it's got to tie in, and blah, 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 and the whole thing just kind of fell apart because they fought too hard to make it all tie together. The movies had always been that way, but for comics, I always liked that because we collect them, we save them, we go through the boxes. So when something comes up and it's like character as last seen in DC Comics Presents 13 in 1964, and it's like, oh, holy crap, now I got to go dig this book out and find it for this missing piece of the story to put it together. That was, to me, was always part of the fun of it, of the collecting and the reading and the buying. But now they've made it, I guess, much more disposable. And I guess that's part of the reason why I'm just not really as enthusiastic about as much of the stuff these days.
I definitely think that's part of it. I think we could do an entire series as to why we could do an entire podcast series as to why the DCU movies have been unable to capitalize on everyone's willingness to accept, like an interconnected, set of movies and a movie universe. But in terms of the comics, I think we're of a specific generation that came up just before Crisis. So we had a taste of what the DC continuity was before Crisis. So we definitely were old enough to appreciate what came before. And then when Crisis came along, it created this sort of sea change that, like you said, changed a bunch of things. Like when I was a kid, I read a lot of like black and white reprints in the digest format, things that you would get at those like Scholastic book sales. And that's what I'm thinking of when I'm thinking of those Superman stories that like introduced me to the Legion of Superheroes, that basically reprinted the first appearance of the Legion of Superheroes, where they've got Superboy in like this electric field on the cover, and like there's like a panel of like of Legionnaires who like are saying, like you've been found guilty of something and you're about to die, and that's and I remember reading that as a kid and not understanding that this was something that had changed post-Crisis. So, I had that somewhat deeper understanding of DC history. I obviously at that time, even though I was mad young, I had become a big fan of the New Teen Titans. Obviously, I read Justice League because we've gone over my my rationale when I was a kid. I love team books because you got more bang for your buck. You got all these heroes under one title for the price of a comic. Because if your dad or your mom or whoever it was that you had convinced to take you to the newsstand was going to let you pick some stuff off the rack, you needed to make that 60 cents count. So if you got $2, that meant 2 books or 3 books, depending on if it was 60 or 75 cents or $1 each, and candy to boot. You always had to get something in addition to your comics. So I can just remember going through the calculus, and I remember seeing Avengers, of course, New Teen Titans. I still remember some of the covers I pulled, and Justice League. You got these really big team books that had all these heroes under the banner, and they were big for me. So that's where my DC history came from. So just not to belabor the point, but we at least had we had more than dipped our toes into DC history prior to Crisis. And, we see how that changed. So I guess we developed an appreciation for what came before without being the folks who were just like, it's too confusing. Screw it. I'm going to give up. I'm not going to even try to understand what's going on.
Well, that's like one of the arguments that I've heard so much in the last, like, say, 10 years. That I've never bought into is they go, we got to keep relaunching these books with number 1s because no one wants to pick up a number 30. No one wants to pick up a 107, whatever. But it's like, I don't know. I remember being in like KB toy stores and seeing like, Batman 409. and just being like, oh, cool, Batman. You know, the fact that it was 409 didn't mean anything. You know, it's like, I haven't read 1 through 408. Am I going to be able to understand this? No, you know, you don't think that. You're just like, oh, okay, well, here's this one. I'm going to pick it up. You know, I just don't buy into that argument that you have to relaunch everything with a new number one, you know, every 12 months, every 18 months, because then it becomes difficult. I was actually having a conversation with my son the other day, and he was like, I want to read that one Guardians of the Galaxy series, but I can't remember which one it was. And he was trying to explain it to me, and I was like, yeah, okay, I remember that one. Yeah, I don't know when that was either. It's like, well, let's look up Guardians of the Galaxy #1. Nope, that's no help at all. You know, it's like there's so many different places where it starts with a new #1, and it's like trying to go back and find that, you know, particular series. It's just like after a while, it's like, oh my gosh, we're gonna have to do a lot of more Googling besides trying to look at #1s and figuring out which one it is.
I mean, part of it, I would just add, hold that thought, Matt. I was just going to add that, you know, obviously I think part of it comes from the speculator market, where everyone's looking for that #1 and they're looking to launch something with the most eyeballs on it. So there's the marketing aspect too. So I think that those are like two main factors in the obsession with launching stuff with a #1. Go ahead, Matt.
I was reading a recent interview.
Your mic is cutting out.
Yeah.
Interview with an older creator, and I can't remember what it was. Saying that, you know,
Your audio's choppy.
Nope.
hold on. Okay, how's
It's better.
Say something more.
okay? So I was reading this interview with an older creator, and what they were saying was, if you started a new series, and this is kind of back in the 70s and 80s, like people wanted a high number, right? They wanted the 409, right? They didn't want issue #1 or 2 because they wanted something that was part of a longer continuity, and it was harder to do limited series back then, which is why you don't see a lot of limited series back in those days. But I thought it was an interesting footnote, right? Because now, you know, obviously editorial wants to do new issue, and I feel your pain on.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very much annoyed with the relaunches of Guardians. You know, I don't know why they feel like they need to relaunch that. They can definitely just keep the ball rolling when the creative teams change. It's very, that particular series of books that you mentioned, Dirt, is very frustrating in my eyes. So I definitely feel where your son is coming from. I would at this time recommend Marvel Unlimited as a new convert because they are all on there, at least that particular series.
Yeah, we've got Marvel Unlimited.
Yeah. So
it's one of those things. I've got the Marvel Unlimited, I've got the Comixology Unlimited, and I've got the, you know, Amazon, whatever, part of their Amazon Prime library, whatever they call that. They've got a bunch of comics on there too. So, but
that's proven to me invaluable during quarantine. So, you know,
I also have a wall of short boxes on the other side of this camera that makes this corner of the living room into my office because it cuts off the rest of the room by having all of these boxes stacked up here. So one way or another, I can find what I'm looking for. The problem is when you look up, well, it's a Guardians of the Galaxy #1. How many could there be? You know? And then you do the search and it's like, okay, well.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, so if there be nothing else, let us wrap back around to Crisis on Infinite Earths and end this up with any final thoughts on the series or clicks a week, whatever.
I'm still having trouble digesting issue 12 because I did not get to finish reading it. It seems a little on the anticlimactic side. I think the two strongest issues are 7 and probably 10. You know, 8 is, with the death of the Flash is okay, but I had already kind of picked through it because of trying to figure out the pseudoscience, or just what the reasoning for it was at the time. But definitely, I think 7 with the death of Supergirl, and 10 being the issue where everyone kind of gets together and Uncle Sam makes his little pledge to get everyone going in the right direction, and the Spectre basically laying the smackdown on the anti.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and go with 7, because I mean the whole issue was just like you got the exposition going into it. It's like, all right, they got past that forward. Now let's get to the action, and then everything started popping off, and then of course the sad part about it was Supergirl died, but she went out she went out like a hero, like said earlier, like that was said earlier. So
yeah.
So it was a great issue just for that, and it just weirdly overshadows Flash dying for a couple of different reasons, because of the way it happened, and then because like knowing, like, okay, you hear later on, not reading this, just reading this for the first time earlier, it's like, well, the Flash died, and you know that happened. I guess wait, this is the first time he died. Didn't he die that again, something like that? And it's like, okay, well, the way he died in here was just kind of like, yeah, he just poof, he did his thing, yeah, but it was like in relation to the way Supergirl died, it was like a little less of an impact.
Yeah, 7 for me is definitely, this is one of those watershed books where it's like, holy crap, they do this? Like the characters actually die? Like, for real? Like, what? Like, I couldn't believe it. And also for years, I used to collect every time they would do an homage to this cover or a parody of this cover. Anybody would do. I remember there was a Mighty Mouse where they did a Crisis on Infinite Earths, and they had Mighty Mouse holding another dead Mighty Mouse, and that was one that went into my collection. And I remember there was another Superman book where one of the monsters from Star Labs who had become a hero, he dies, and so they did another homage to this cover. And I remember having that one. I mean, I probably have a dozen parodies and homages to this cover in my boxes, in my collection. This is just one of those things, like, when you talk about Crisis, like, this is the image that comes to mind when I think of Crisis, is this cover right here. Like, this is just so iconic for me. And so, yeah, this is definitely the issue that I gravitate towards.
Yep.
Matt?
Matt's gone.
Yeah, he might have stepped away. No, he's there. He's on mute.
There, but yeah.
Yeah, he probably stepped away. So we can, like when he gets back, we might ask him what his click of the week is. So, all right, Dirt. Thanks for that. I definitely appreciate you and Matt's. Roddy. I don't want to speak for Roddy, but I definitely appreciate having your historical perspective on this, because this has been very informative. And I was kind of cramming issue 12 in under before the show started. I didn't quite finish, so I found it ironic that I was the one recapping issue 12. So I still have to kind of digest what happens in the issue, but having gone through the cliff notes, I see how we kind of springboard into what is the post-crisis continuity with Wonder Woman, with the Flash, and with because Batman wasn't really touched. Superman was sort of touched because they dealt with his history. They didn't really, it's funny that they stayed away from Batman, and they mostly stayed away from the New Teen Titans, which were the stronger books at the time. So that's sort of why when I was a kid, I didn't really care for Crisis, because it didn't really touch the books I was reading. Although I didn't like the fact that things had changed and whatnot, and Perez wasn't on Titans at the time. So,
well, one of the things though to point out is that it did bring a big change to Batman, even though it didn't happen in this series. But this was the excuse to reboot Jason Todd, because Jason Todd, and he even appears in the book. He calls him Jay.
Yeah.
Right.
Jason Todd was just a clone of Dick. He was a Dick Grayson Part 2. And everybody just kind of looked at him as like, meh, he's really just the same thing. Just like, really no different. So they decided because of Crisis, they could redo him. And so they made him the a street smart little thug, and Batman's
steals the hubcaps.
Right, and so he's stealing those off the Batmobile, and he becomes this uncontrollable little dickhead that ends up getting himself killed by the Joker.
Oh,
and by fans.
Okay. What was that?
I said, and by fans, because they were the ones who voted for that happening.
That's right. That's okay.
I always wondered, that was a 900 number people had to call in order to vote for Jason Todd's death. I always wondered how much money DC Comics actually made off of asking the fans to kill Jason Todd.
I don't know.
You got me. Yeah. Matt, can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I can hear you. I heard you.
Okay. Your lights went out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so put the lights out for the fam. But we
were quarantined.
Yeah, we just asked what your pick of what your click of the week is for issues 7 through 12. You said 7 also. Okay. All right. So I think we're pretty unanimous on 7.
That sounds like.
Yep. Cool.
Well,
Any thoughts, Matt, on just wrapping up the series and like the after effects and whatnot?
I kind of said it last week. It really is it really is the framework for a lot of the future series we've read, and it follows similar beats and comics for 30 plus years. I mean, it's part of the history, and it's nice to read the original story that kind of led to so many other stories that we've all enjoyed.
Got it.
Yeah, that was actually there was one little point I was going to make because y'all kind of hit up on it already, but it was like, yeah, so this is the one that kind of influence other stories and all, but also that one little thing about, well, because of things that are coming out of this story, this event kind of launches other characters into their own books or whatever. Because like I said, we see Wally, becoming the Flash in here, and then that they touched on what with Wonder Woman and whatnot, and it's like, well, okay, well, from this, then that's what that started. That's basically, it seems like, where they started seeding people to kind of like, well, if you're interested in what that's all about, you go seek out these books type situations, because it's like, okay, hey, this is happening, so you might want to know, and that's where, like, especially Marvel is kind of heavy-handed with that right now. It's like, hey, an event's going on, but we're going to touch on this other stuff that is going on, and that's going to be going on later on, or events that, or even quote unquote an event book that pretty much just touches on all the events to come type situation, and it's like, okay, so this is pretty much what that comes on to in a short order. That being the case, folks, I guess we will try to transition into the news, but first, I want to get to an ad read real quick.
All right, our first ad read of the night is for Wink, the personalized wine club. Wink is a world of wine delivered right to your door. From rosé to Cabernet to Torronté, Wink has over 100 styles of wine to discover. Ever try an orange wine? Wink connects you to a world of exclusive wines tailored to your taste and delivered directly to your door. Wink delivers 4 bottles of wine to you every month with free shipping. You can pick your own bottles or let Wink choose and match to your taste. It doesn't cost a thing to become a member, and you can skip or cancel anytime. And now the listeners of the Comic Book Chronicles can enjoy an exclusive discount of $20 off your first order. To place your first order with $20 off and to help keep our show free for you, go to our network website at cspn.us/wink. That's cspn.us/WINC. Wink Wines through CSPN. Do it today.
Hey guys, before you start the news, I'm gonna have to sign out. But
Okay.
Thank you again for having me. It's good to see all of you, and kind of great show. I really appreciate you guys inviting me, and hopefully the listeners, you guys all enjoyed it.
All righty, thanks,
Indeed,
Matt.
indeed.
Appreciate it. Take it easy. All the best to the fam.
Thanks. Take care, guys.
Take it easy.
Alrighty.
So I was going to switch it up and say, because I know the guys wanted to get to that Diamond news, and since I got to kind of have that first off, so we're gonna do comic book news first. So because I got that on top of that right now, so that the dirt and you can say his piece
No
on
problem.
that, and then then we can head on with the rest of the stuff. So that being the case, let me pull this up and start off with first of all, Diamond's marketing execs, excuse me, for healthcare industry. So apparently, Diamond Comics Distributors' longtime marketing director Dan Manzer has left the company and the comics business entirely and went to Medicare for some reason. So he wrote on LinkedIn. That's great. That's all well and done. Next up, Diamond reveals plan to reopen comics industry in. So I got this in a weird kind of order, so forgive me for this. But Diamond reveals plan to reopen comic books industry in May. But I think what we wanted to kind of get to.
There's like a family of stories here that we can cover kind of as in bulk.
Mm-hmm.
We can go all the way down to the DC, the line 424, DC Rush's New Giants. Like all of these stories are kind of interrelated, but you can kind of start at the top.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of getting to this, because the next story is basically that DC is to start publishing new comics on April the 28th because they have a new distribution deal with some folks. And there's the story after that is from Newsarama that is talking about basically what their plan is with DC's new plan. So it's called Inside DC's new print distribution plan, and the new distributors involved. We come to find out that is Midtown Comics and Lunar Distribution.
DCBS.
DCBS, yes. And let me see. Keep going to initial retailer reaction to DC's distribution plan is mixed, to say the least. And also DC enlists new distributors to ship comics. Diamond responds. So this is Diamond's, response to what DC is doing with that. Diamond also refused that DC's notice to retailers about canceled orders. States that they are still a DC distributor. And well, this is kind of more comic stuff, but more comic focused stuff. But we can kind of stop right there and talk about that whole deal with what DC's doing. And the reaction to it.
That says it all.
Yeah.
I know PCN_dirt and Roddykat will appreciate the fact that often my heaviest sighs state multitudes when I do them, so I can sort of see where Dirt is going, but I think he has more to say.
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind is like, hey, I would love to be reading some new comics right now. I mean, I would love if the industry was able to keep going. Problem, stores are shut down. Last I read is there were only 6 states in the continental United States that don't have some sort of stay-at-home or shelter-in-place order, at least in parts of the state. Now, some states aren't completely shut down. It's just the major metropolitan areas and some of the smaller areas are left open. But a lot of states, including where I live in Illinois, are completely shut down. Groceries, hardware. I'm trying to think. Gas stations, automotive repair shops, bicycle repair shops. Walmart. Everything else is shut down. You're not allowed to run your business. You're supposed to stay home. You're not supposed to go out and do things unless you have to go out and do them. Otherwise, you're supposed to stay in your house. So that kind of creates an issue when they say, hey, we're going to throw out new product, because I would love to have that new product. I can't go to my store and buy it, which means I either have to go online and order it and get it from somewhere else, and get it shipped, to me, or I have to wait. and the waiting is the hardest part, as the song goes. But one of the other bigger problems is DC, when they announced this, they said, hey, we've got these 2 new distribution partners that are going to work with us to get these books out. And they are going to, instead of having to wait for Diamond to reopen, we're going to use them and their services to help distribute these books. And they gave these 2 names that they threw out there as their new distribution partners. And it took a while for people to start digging through the information. And I don't know if they were like backtracking URLs or if they're comparing phone numbers or what happened, but eventually they figured out that it's Midtown Comics and DCB Service. And the problem is that these are retailers. These are not distributors. And these retailers often undercut cover price on things in order to ship them out, to sell them to customers, to undercut your local comic book store. So there are people that, instead of going to their local comic shop, every week, they mail order through these places so they can save 20%, 30%, 40% off the cover price, which, I mean, if that's your business, you got the volume to do it. Hey, it's America, it's a free country, whatever. But when DC says now you have to go through them as a competitor,
right, as the exclusive distributor,
right? So we have 3 comic book stores here in town. We have one store that has said they're going to order through these new distributors and get these new books. And the people say, well, your store is shut down. How are you going to sell these books? Well, basically, they're going to give a middle finger to the governor, and they're going to go out, and if anybody wants the books, they can send them a message on Facebook, and they will drive to the person's house, and they will sell them the books, which kind of defeats the whole shelter in place stay at home order, but you got to run your business. You got to do stuff. So, like, on the one hand, I'm kind of tempted to be like, well, I normally, now here's the weird thing. Now this is me being weird. I used to work at one of the stores. I used to work at one of the other stores. I'm on really good terms with the owner of the 3rd store. And so I actually have pulls at all 3 stores.
Wow. Wait a second.
So
I got a sound effect for that. Talking about me.
That's fair.
Talking about me needing to get my my computer. I can get my computer, damn it. I just choose not to. But anyway.
There's a store I still kind of help out with part-time. Like, I go in once a week and kind of help them with the new books and whatever. So those are the books that I really want the most. I get to take those home on Tuesday, before they go on sale. Then the other 2 stores I'll make it to on Wednesday, or one of the stores, it's stuff I may go pick up later in the week. I may go on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday to pick up that stuff. It's stuff that I want to have and I want to read, whatever, but it's kind of further down the list. And obviously I've got other stuff that I'm going to get to in the days before that. So, and it's also what I call my cleanup store, because I'll read the PDFs that we get for review and stuff, and then it's like, oh, I'd like to pick up a copy of that. So then I go and I'll grab one from that store. So I get stuff from all 3 stores. Well, I'm kind of tempted to be like, well, I normally get this from this guy, but he's going to have it now, and he's willing to defy the law and bring the comics to my house, so I might order the books from him and go ahead and get them, which is going to kind of suck for this guy who's going to sit and wait for things to reopen. They just extended our lockdown order. We're locked down for another month, so even if Diamond is able to reopen in mid-May and get things going and start shipping stuff out, the other 2 stores, they're not going to be there to pick up their deliveries. They're not going to be able to, get the books that Diamond is shipping out.
The end of May?
Yeah, we are on shutdown till the end of May.
Okay, because right now New York is only through mid-May, but I fully anticipate we're going to be end of May as well. So
yeah, they extended ours another 30 days from it was supposed to end April 30th, and they extended it another 30 days beyond that. So, so it's like, on the one hand, it's, you have that quandary as a customer, I'm on good terms with these guys, whatever. On the other hand, there's that part of me that really wants new comics. But then there's also that part of me that's just like, Why was DC so shady about telling us who these people were? Oh, it's because it's competition. These are not distributors. These are other comic shops. What's going to happen when, like, say, Batman 92 finally comes out, hot book, massive quantities, they start opening boxes, Midtown Comics and DCB service, they're probably going to have 100% of their order pristine, no creases, no bent corners, no damages in shipping. Other people down the line, their books might not be 100%. They may not be the same mint quality books that.
Or they may
know,
not
these other
get their
companies.
variants, right? They may not get
Right.
their variants and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. So, you know, you would hope that someplace wouldn't do that, but there's really nothing to stop them from doing that, and no way to prove that that's what they're doing. So it just creates a lot of problems. Now, I can understand DC had books that apparently were supposed to come out at the end of March, and things shut down because of the virus and everything, that are sitting at a Diamond warehouse that were already delivered, that Diamond did not send out, that they're like, hey, we want to get these books are already printed, they're already out, whatever, we want to get them distributed out. And I can, you know, kind of understand that. You've got these weird books in limbo. But when they're talking about, like, we're going to press forward on some new stuff, we're going to make new product, we're going to try to get new stuff out there, and your stores can't sell it, well, too bad for them. We're going to go with the people who can. I mean, that really kind of sucks for these other places who really are your main outlet of sales. I mean, you're basically going, you know, the direct market is the only thing that's really keeping comics alive. Barnes & Noble isn't keeping comics alive by selling trades at 40% off, you know. Amazon is not keeping comics alive by selling a $44.95 trade for $13.95. You know, that's not keeping comics alive. What's keeping comics alive are these stores. And for them to turn around and just be like, yeah, no, we're not really worried about you guys. How much of that is the comics market, and how much of that is AT&T and Time Warner and whoever else who are now looking at DC going, look, you guys don't really make us a whole lot of money. We don't really care. Just throw this stuff out there, figure out whatever it takes. Just make this stuff go. And if you can't do that, then, you know, whatever, maybe we're going to shut you down or whatever, which we've been hearing rumors about, you know, for the last year and a half. That's possible, but it's really just a bad situation altogether. And it's one of those things where you look at comics and, you know, comic sales keep going down. 2 years ago, they would not count Kickstarter and Indiegogo products as part of the sales. Then they started doing that. Why? Because people are doing Kickstarter projects and they're getting $500,000, and they're going, okay, well, now we need to start counting this in as comic sales. So now Kickstarter stuff is figuring in on those sales, and they can go, well, look, sales are up 18%. They're not really up 18% because these are books selling at $20 a piece for what would be a $5 book, because it's going through this weird crowdfunding, you know, whatever. That's not really a healthy comic market. You know, that's a whole bunch of other issues going on with all of that stuff. But for the actual comic market itself, it's not really doing well. It's turning into vinyl. And there are certainly places you can go and you can find vinyl shops. You know, we've got 2 places here in town you can buy vinyl records, you know, so it's obviously not something that has gone away completely. But if you look at the vinyl sales versus the rest of music sales, or versus movies, or versus really anything else, they're not a huge part of the market. So I'm looking at what DC's doing and the way that they're just kind of screwing over a lot of these shops. And, you know, it's not my shop necessarily that I'm worried about. It's not my 3 here in town that I'm necessarily worried about. But there are a lot of shops in a lot of places that don't make a lot of money. They're just open because they love comics. They don't, you know, turn a huge profit. They try to make just enough money to stay in business. And this whole nightmare disaster scenario of this virus has made it tough for everybody to stay in business. Yep. Great. That's fine. Now is not the time to stick a thumb in their eye and tell them, hey, if you want to defy the order and pay a $500 fine for being open when you're supposed to be closed, then, you know, here's some product, please go sell it. You know, this is not really the time to be doing that type of stuff, but yet this is the time where we find ourselves. So it's really just a bad situation in every way you look at it, from DC. because it's a bad situation already, and they've just kind of piled on and made it worse instead of just taking a step back and like, hey, we're going to wait for this thing to play out, like pretty much everyone else has done. So, not too happy with DC right now. I'll put it that way.
You're on mute.
All right, yeah, I guess I just noticed that. So here's where I have an issue with that, and I'm not saying I wouldn't as well versed, and I don't have the comic connection to it, but I have talked to a couple of people here. Like one, even if DC hadn't done this thing, and Diamond's over here saying, well, we're about to open back up, and places are still under order. Isn't that not fair to say? That's basically saying that okay, these places would still do that anyway. Defy the order because Diamond's trying to open back up and send stuff to stores. So they could technically still do that.
Diamonds is still contingent on the state opening back up. Like they're saying, well, we think mid-May.
Mm-hmm.
Estimate.
Okay. And that's it's like an estimate. And it, like Agent 70 said, like right now they're on lockdown till mid-May, but mid-May they're supposed to start opening things back up. So they're saying, hey, mid-May, it looks like we might be able to open things back up. It's not like they're saying, hey, on the May 14th,
sure, yeah,
we're opening the doors come hell or high water.
Right.
So if Cuomo comes out and says, hey, we're staying on lockdown until June 1st, Diamond's going to be like, well, hey, look, we're going to be on lockdown until June 1st. There's just nothing we can do about it because we're still on lockdown.
Sure. And I feel like this is probably a question for another time in another place because it's starting to get late. But so, and I have talked to a couple of the stores here, and I know they've had issues with Diamond for one reason or another here. And the fact that Diamond has this whole monopoly on the industry anywhere feels okay. Yeah, it's good for one thing because it's all coming through one place. But at the same time, it's like, well, if they're holding the keys to everything, then that feels like that's a problem that needs to change. Now, granted, what's going on now has nothing to do with them, because we have a bigger issue going on. But it feels,
Hold on, my headphone. I forgot to charge them before I got.
Okay.
Okay, good. Oh wow, you did. Yeah, your audio changed also, but what was I gonna say? Oh, well, just round it up about the fact that Diamond has a monopoly on things. Shouldn't that feels like that needs to change anyway due to what's going on? Like virus aside and this aside, like it feels like, especially with what we know that they were trying to find an alternate way previously that we talked about last week that kind of got killed off. Shouldn't somebody be trying to do that? Like, granted, not defying state orders or anything, but shouldn't something have to change?
And again,
stores can get what they need. And
it's a matter of now is not really the time, I mean, with lockdown and everything like that. But the problem is, Diamond doesn't really have a monopoly, and that's what it comes down to, because Diamond doesn't own every means of the distribution, and there are other distribution like Simon and Schuster, Scholastic. They all have means of distribution for getting books out there. Diamond signs exclusive contracts with particular publishers for direct market, but those publishers can also do direct mail to customers on their own. So, for instance, Marvel sells directly to customers through Midtown Comics.
Right.
So if you can contact Marvel and say, I want to buy these books, they will say, hey, we'll sell them to you. And then they hand you off to Midtown, and Midtown will ship them to you. And if you want 500 copies of something, they will do that through Midtown Comics. So they don't really have a monopoly in that sense. So as far as monopolies go, it technically doesn't fall under that umbrella. I'm sure Agent 70 understands the monopoly laws a lot better than I.
Right. I mean, right, exactly. Just to hold on to that thought, I was about to say, in the strictest sense, it's a monopoly in the strictest sense that your comic book store is going to have problems getting their direct comic deliveries from any source other than Diamond, But PCN_Dirk brings up a valid point in that, right, there are other ways for individuals to get their comics without having to go through someone who's being supplied by Diamond.
Right. And I think technically a lot of the places, they have signed exclusive contracts with Diamond just because there's nobody else out there. So it's like, hey, sign an exclusive contract. It's like, well, okay, because it's not like they're going to Heroes World or Capital City. Like, the places are out of business. If another distributor for floppies were to come along and try to sell these comics, then a lot of these publishers would be like, okay, we're not renewing that exclusive contract, right? So in that sense, there's no real monopoly there. But one of the retailers here in town, one of the guys who opens another shop, I was talking to him the other day, and he was like, I like Diamond. He goes, I like having one catalog. He goes, I remember the days of having 3 different catalogs, of having to go through and order books. And they're due at different times. They're due in different windows. The final order cutoffs are at different times. Your amounts that you pay, your discounts are different. The shipping is different. Some would arrive on different days. I mean, it was just, kind of a nightmare. Diamond really did a good job of streamlining everything, bringing it all under one roof, which, yeah, there are problems that are kind of associated with that. But then at the same time, there's a lot of great things that come with that, where you just have the one book, you pick the stuff, you send it in, you know exactly what you're getting, when you're getting it, what your discounts are. Everything's already, compiled and calculated and ready to go. So he's like, there's no way I'm touching any of these other distributors. I'm ordering my stuff through Diamond because I don't want to go back to those days of messing with all these different distributors. The other guy at the other store is just like, I'm going to get comics where I can get comics, and I'm going to sell them wherever I can sell them. And if they try to arrest me or fine me or whatever, then we'll just see how strong the Constitution is, and we'll, fight some of this stuff and see what happens.
I was about to say, he's trying to just stay afloat during these quarantine days too. That's also something that is, the economic stressors are so strong at this point. I have to tell you that I don't know if Roddykat put this story into the news, but I can tell you that one of the biggest comic book stores here in New York City, Forbidden Planet, it's a storied store, set up a GoFundMe to help defray the cost of being in quarantine. They're basically the second biggest comic book store in Manhattan. That's what I was going to add.
Yeah, well, and they used to have satellite stores, but I think a lot of those have shriveled up over the past few years.
No, that was Hanley's actually. So,
okay.
Yeah, Jim Hanley's Universe had satellite stores, but they shriveled into just the main Jim Hanley's that's on Staten Island, it's a small store, and JHU, which is run by, it's essentially an acronym for Jim Hanley's Universe, but it's run by former Hanley's employees, and they have a smaller store. It's still a good store, but it's a smaller store in Manhattan on the east side. So, but in terms of, obviously Midtown's the big boy on the block, and they have so much capital that they can still keep their 3 stores, intact. But when something like Forbidden Planet is the comic book store that I grew up going to in high school. Like, it was close to the pool hall. It was, I would hustle pool, have a few bucks from winning a couple of games, go pick up some comics, and then go back to the pool hall. Obviously, when I should have been in the library studying. So, but at the end of the day, this is one of the storied comic book stores in Manhattan. It's it's an offshoot of the one that's in London, or the ones that are in England. But ultimately, if they have to put out a request for a GoFundMe out to the customers and the fans to try to, like I said, defray the costs of being in quarantine, it's going to be tough to get back to normal in a lot of different regards. And comic book retail and the comic book industry is just going to be one of them that's going to be facing tough times. I can understand these retailers who are like, just send me something. There's been some push to have comic book retailers, try to entice people into buying what is always, sarcastically, lovingly referred to as backstock. Stuff that's in the bins, stuff that's on the shelves, that's just kind of sitting there. And to try to get people to buy those, they still have product to sell. They just don't have new product. And unfortunately, new product is what drives the comic book business.
Well, and there's a lot of things. Well, first of all, I just want to add, I have read several stories of stores that have closed since the virus. They're in areas that were not in quarantine shut down. They've tried to remain open. They just couldn't, because of the economics of everything going on. So they've shut their doors. I don't know what went on with small business loans and all that kind of stuff. But people floated different ideas. They said, hey, we could quickly, real quickly, get a bunch of writers and artists, have everybody do a bunch of black and white books, put them on newsprint, ship them out to the places that are open, mail order them out. They're going to be kind of funky, funny little stuff. Like you could do a bunch of 8-page Batman black and white stories,
right?
Just to have some product to put stuff out there where it's going to be cheap, it's going to be temporary, and then when things get flowing again, you can reprint it like the quarantine book, of this stuff, and have it reprinted on nice paper. Maybe some of it's colored, maybe some of it has professional lettering, whatever. But there are different ideas that people floated around for different things that you could do to, kind of keep things going without it being like, just a big middle finger to a bunch of these retailers where it's just like, well, you can't run your store. Well, too bad. We're just going to go with everybody else, and you're just going to shut down and go out of business, and too bad, So the problem is there's no winning formula. There's no great way to solve everything. There's a lot of writers and artists that are just, I want to make stuff. And it's like, well, you can make stuff. Like open a Indiegogo, start a project, do something, have people throw money on it. Open a Patreon, and people can pay, $5 a week, and you give them, 3 or 4 pages of an ongoing comic. Like there's stuff that you can do to kind of keep things churning, keep things going, and feed people out there without going to this group and just saying, we're cutting you out, screw you, whatever, in this, tough time. So, I mean, I think that's really what it comes down to. It's like, how are you treating these people who are really like the front line of who's selling this stuff out there? Because if all the comic shops, or if half the comic shops in the U.S. close, I mean, that kills the industry.
Yeah.
That won't be enough to keep things going. And like I said, Barnes & Noble selling trades and Amazon selling trades at massive discounts, that's not going to keep the comic industry going.
Right. What I was going to add, though, is I think you're fortunate that the 3 comic book stores in your town are, at least for now, knock on wood, very hard, that, at least for now, that they're still planning on reopening, and they're still in a halfway decent state. There are some smaller stores here in the 5 boroughs of New York City that I'm worried about. And as I mentioned, if Forbidden Planet is coming on tough times, obviously their overhead is huge. They pay a rent for a storefront, a ground floor storefront on Broadway near Union Square in the heart of like tourist Manhattan. And, obviously they have that overhead, but if they're, hurting for funds, that doesn't bode well for some of the smaller stores. So
right, like I was talking to one of the guys who owns a store in town, and he was like, I have cash reserves. He was like, I run my business to have a savings. So when stuff like this happens, like, I'm not out on the street. It doesn't ruin my business. He goes, but I hear from so many of these people that it's like they write the check to Diamond on Wednesday, and then they get for comics, and then they have to sell enough of those comics during the week that they can write the check to Diamond for the next week.
To make
Right.
ends meet.
They're running that way, and if you're running your business that way, he's like, something comes up, you're out of business. Part of your roof collapses and ruins part of your stock. You don't have stuff to pay for it, then you're out of business. It's just a lot of stores are run by people who are fans of the medium, but they're not necessarily good business people either. So they're great for
funded, underfunded when they started,
right.
Yeah.
They're great for evangelizing the product, but they're terrible for continuing the business.
Right, which it sounds like something else on the back end that probably needs to change. Because, I mean, if it was going to happen, that kind of needs to be a focus with the businesses more
Right.
than
Right.
what's going on
I mean,
outside of that.
right. Sustainability for just about any business is always a difficult subject. And as Dirt said, I definitely know of comic book businesses that unfortunately operate too close to that margin, where they have to sell most of the books that they order one week so that they can afford to cut a check for the following week's book. So it's a tough line to toe every week.
Well, and here's the thing, I live in a town of 100,000 people, and then plus 4 suburbs. We have 3 comic book shops. If I drive hour north to Bloomington Normal, there's 2 or 3 comic shops. If I drive to Peoria, there's 2 or 3 comic shops. If I, go another hour up the road to Joliet, there's a couple comic shops. If I go to Champaign, there's some comic shops. If I go to Chicago, you go to Chicago, there's suddenly 20 comic shops. You go into Wisconsin, into Madison, there's like 5 comic shops. This is an area, this geographic area, I don't know what it is, but we love comics. There's something about this area. Comics just resonate here. I don't know what it is.
Nothing else to do. Kidding.
Well, that and you're kind of near a major. You're also kind of near a major, like you're near Chicago, and therefore it's a lot of stuff tends to start filtering around. So there's a better than average chance that you get. They're going to be more.
Yeah, I mean, well, and in our town specifically, it's like 2.5 hours to Chicago, hour and a half to St. Louis, 2 hours to Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
We're just in that crossroads area, so it works. But for having 3 stores. But the thing is, if I drive an hour south, straight south, no comic shops. 2 hours south, no comic shops. 3 hours south, I get into Kentucky. Once I get into Kentucky, then there's comic shops.
Right.
So it's like there's this half of the state, no comic shops. The other half of the state packed with comic shops.
Right. And
so it's just really weird how that works.
Yeah,
it's exactly what Roddy said, though.
Exactly.
It's like radiate away from the suburbs of the major metropolitan center. I mean, it's the same thing here in New York. As you're moving north from, the downstate area, obviously Manhattan, the 5 boroughs of New York City, rent is so expensive that it's hard for these comic book stores to, to maintain payment of their overhead. But they have the benefit of being in the urban center. As you move north, there's fewer and fewer comic book stores until you get to more urban centers or smaller cities. So I definitely understand how that works, because there are what I lovingly refer to as comic book deserts in certain parts of New York State and in New Jersey, especially New Jersey when I drive into Jersey, which I try not to do, but I have family there. So when I ask them, where's your local comic book store? They're not fans. So I just hit up, locate the LCS, locate the local comic shop service online, or try Googling, and I see how far I have to drive. And, it's much further and fewer in between. So,
yeah. And also things like the comic shop locator service are very poorly designed.
Mm-hmm.
I really dislike that service, because one of the things that it's set for is put in your zip code and find your local shops. Well, when I'm traveling, we drove to Florida. I'm in the middle of Alabama. I want to know, hey, are there any comic shops around here? Put in your zip code. I'm in the middle of Alabama.
Well, that's what Google is for. Look for.
Well, no, to be fair though, they do have
I should be able to open a comic shop locator app, on my phone, and put GPS, press a button, it knows where I am, and then it can draw a circle and say, here are stores near you. But I can't do that. And if you open Google Maps and you type in comic books, it's going to go, oh, here's a Walmart.
Really?
That's not what I'm looking for.
Yeah, because matter of fact, I just did just that. So two things. So, Comic Shop Locator does have a use my location function on it. I don't know how well it works, but there is one.
It may not come up on mobile then. I don't know.
Yeah, and they do have the app. So like you said, they might not come up on mobile. Who even knows? But I would imagine at this point they probably should have. But at this point, so here's where I am. I am in the state capital of the state. This is Columbia, South Carolina. There are 2 stores here, because one of the stores that's been around for years and years, for decades, had closed down like late last year or early last year or something like that. So there's 2 stores. The one I usually go to, and this other store that is a hybrid record store and / comic book shop. And obviously, they reverse it because they got Funko Pops and stuff like that. But nevertheless, those are the 2 open shops in my spot. Now I'm in the middle of the state, and the state, the nearest big cities here are Charlotte, Charleston, Greensboro, Spartanburg, at the edges of the state. Someone would say Augusta, but that's whatever. That's not even us. In between all of that, like I just pulled up, find my location, and I use the thing, and there's like those three just shows. Actually, it says another one's on here, but I don't if that shows actually open or not. And that's kind of what you were saying about the desert type situation. It's like there's only two here. As you go farther out, like if you go to like Orangeburg or wherever else, like I don't even remember there being any comic book stores there at the time that I was going there frequently, and that's only like an hour away from here, or even certain places. So in places like this, you don't have a whole lot of options, and of course you have other places like Second and Charles, but that's not ideal, or for whatever the case may be. But you have that, and you have the Barnes and Nobles, and that's pretty much what you got in this town and probably surrounding areas.
I think the comic shop locator having to use my location is fairly new, because when we drove down to Florida, I tried using it and it was completely worthless.
It probably is.
And then you also don't have the ability, like if I say I'm going to Indianapolis, I can't click on Indianapolis and say search here.
Right. Yeah.
Like I click and it just zooms in on the map and it shows me nothing because I don't know the zip code and it's not my location.
Right.
So it's not showing me anything for that stuff. So that's part of the problem I have with that. It's not very well thought out. Now again, maybe now that they have a mobile app, maybe that's different. Maybe it works differently in that app. I don't know, but like I said, when I have traveled in the past, when I went to Ohio, when I went to Florida, when I've done some of these road trips, and I'm just like, hey, I'd love to find a comic shop. It was completely useless if I didn't know the zip code of where I was at or where I was going. It didn't have a location at the time, and if I'm trying to use like Google Maps or any place like that, it wants me to go to like Family Dollar and Walmart, and it's like those are not comic shops.
Right.
Like I don't know why you're sending me there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another problem but that's because the comic book industry is kind of small. They need to think things through a little bit better on trying to get it out and open and in front of more eyeballs and out to more people. And there's only so much you can do, but there's, I think, a lot of things that they could do so much better if they would just put the time into it. And they just don't. I think a lot of times they go, well, here we did something. And it's like, okay, well, now take it to the next step, refine it. Like, here's some feedback, fix it, take it to the next step. And they just, how long has the comic shop locator been? And now they finally have it use my location, I can tell you it wasn't there when I went to Ohio a year and a half ago. So, that tells you a lot right there. And that service has been around for a decade and a half. So there's a lot of work that still needs to be done as far as the comic book industry getting, and part of the problem is the comic book industry has this problem figuring out who their customers are, because sometimes their customers are the comic shops and sometimes their customers are the comic readers, and they seem to have this problem figuring out who exactly they're selling to sometimes and who they're trying to attract, who they're trying to please, because a lot of times retailers want one thing and readers are in a different area. And I don't know, it seems, without getting into a lot of these details and a lot of these things that have come up, there's just always these ideas where the comic book companies will be like, well, we want to service our customers, and they're talking about the retailers.
Right.
DC Comics, it's like, oh, well, what our customers want, and they're talking about the readers. They need to figure out some way of communicating better and figuring out better when you're talking to a reader, when you're talking to a retailer, the business end of things, as opposed to like readers, conventions, people, signing, want their books autographed. These are two different people, and yet they tend to talk about them both the same way, even when they're talking about different things. I don't. It's just, it's a PR thing, I guess. Maybe it's a marketing thing that needs to be dealt with. I don't know, but it's weird. And a lot of times, creators, writers, and artists, their customers, sometimes they refer to their customers. Their customers are the comic book publishers. Okay, well, what about the readers? Are they your customers? You know, because they'll buy books based on who's writing it or who's doing the artwork. But is it the comic shops? You know, so there's a lot of weird stuff about the industry like that.
Yeah, and we're kind of hoping that, like, we even talked about this last week, so we can go ahead and wrap this up and finish up. But like, hopefully, some things they will start having these conversations and having these talks, you know, to kind of further the industry going forward after this. Because not to say that this is something like this is going to happen again, but at the same time, you don't know that, and there has to be something in place already, you know, to help with that. And these little side projects that are coming up or you know, a thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I do hope that, you know, this is a terrible time, terrible thing. A lot of terrible things have happened, and complaining about comics is kind of low on the list of the terrible things happening in the world right now. But I do hope that this pause and this pencils down and everything gives people a chance to kind of, okay, now that we're not mired in it, now that we're not, you know, connected to 20,000 different things trying to just keep everything afloat right now, let's rethink some of this stuff. Let's maybe restructure some of this stuff. Let's reconceptualize how some of this stuff works. You know, I'm one of those who I like the idea of digital in some ways, and I like the idea of print in some ways. And there are some books that I really want to own and keep and collect that I know I'm going to go back and read. And there's some that I just want to read, and I'm not really that worried about owning a physical copy, you know. Marvel gives you a free digital copy with every paper copy you buy. DC doesn't. Why are they different? How do they balance out? Can we get the two to talk to each other and figure out why one is doing one and one is doing the other? Several years ago, there was Marvel actually had a promotion before they had the codes in all the books, where if you bought a digital comic online, you could print out a certificate and take it to your local store and trade it in for a paper copy. So they actually tried the reverse for a while, but they just decided it was easier to just print codes in all their books and give away the digital ones that way. You know, so why didn't that work? Like, can we have that conversation? Like, can I pick somebody's brain on that? Can we, you know, figure out, like, why wasn't that a good practice, and why is giving away the digital ones better, and why is DC so afraid of that, you know, and why is you know, Dark Horse so committed to running their own Dynamite, running their own stores, you know, like, do you guys really need to have your own digital marketplace? Can we do, you know, Movies Anywhere came out last year or the year before, and it's fantastic. Because there are movies I bought on my Xbox 360 I completely forgot I owned, and suddenly they show up in my Vudu library, and I'm like, oh crap, I forgot I bought that. Now I can watch that again. That's awesome. You know, can we do something with all these digital libraries and merge everything together? Like, is there really a reason why you're pulling these things apart? Because I can't imagine that there are that many people wired into the Dark Horse digital marketplace, you know, that you have to keep it separate because your profits are so high because you've got so many people buying your books through your own marketplace. I'm sure there's got to be, you know, again, these are conversations that I'm hoping some of these people are having now that everything else is pretty much paused and at a standstill. I'm hoping conversations like this are happening with a lot of these places.
Right, and you bring up the Marvel thing with the digital codes. You remember DC did that for like 2 minutes.
Well, yeah, but they sold digital copies, digital plus copies.
Well, yeah,
so
but they did a little bit of both.
The combo pack.
Right, but they did a little bit of both because they had some, like, they was like, okay, some of these comics are going to have digital codes
like
with them.
Right.
Yeah, and then some of these other ones just don't.
Right, and I always bought the combo pack ones, and they always had variant coloring on the cover. So I figure, like, hey, that's a whole nother variant, you know, to throw into your collection. With something else. But yeah, I always bought the combo packs. It was an extra $1 though. So you paid an extra $1 to get that digital copy. So I figured it's like, well, you're paying 99 cents basically to get the digital, you know, thrown in there. Fine, whatever. Right. You know, whereas, and at the time, DC was keeping most of their books at $2.99. It was $3.99 for the combo pack, whereas Marvel is doing everything at $3.99 and giving you the free digital copy. So kind of technically, in a way, they were doing the same thing. So it's like, okay, DC, well, why not just push everything? Well, now everything's $3.99. Well, can I get the digital copies now? You know, can you help a brother out, you know. Give me some.
Exactly. Throw something
Exactly.
in.
So
Yeah.
you know, but again, nothing's perfect. Nothing that you're going to do is going to work out great. It's a global pandemic. Things are shut down. Printers are shut down. Shipping supplies are shut down. If you order anything from China, they'll ship it. They'll put it on a boat or a plane. They'll send it over, and then it's going to sit for at least 2 weeks in a quarantine before they will unpack it and move it on, hopefully to kill whatever might be on it. That's just the world that we live in.
Yep.
So it's like, and that's how it's going to be for a couple of years probably, until there's a vaccine, and vaccines don't come overnight.
Yep.
Polio took 4 years, and that was the fastest they ever had for a major vaccine. So who knows how long this whole thing's going to take. But I do hope that in the midst of all of this, the comic book industry can kind of figure some of this stuff out, fix it, and then it can come back and be like, hey, we're a real thing again. Come back, everybody, and I would love to see the comic book industry strong again. And I would love to see comic book, like one of the things that they canceled San Diego Comic-Con, and I was like, good. Now they can just bring it back next year and rebrand it as the San Diego TV and Movie Expo, because that's what they really want it to be. Can we get a real comic book convention anywhere in the United States? The closest thing you're going to find is the guys, with a bunch of tables set up down at the Motel 6 Conference Center,
Heroes Con.
selling out of the long boxes. That's the closest you get to a real comic book convention.
I mean, I love New York because it does kind of, it really has so much under its roof. It definitely does have a big entertainment component to it. They still, with New York Comic Con being scheduled for the fall, we're still, like I have a lot of. It's too bad that Matt Wang's not here. We could have his input on this conversation, because we generally hang out every New York Comic Con. Like, it's the only time he can get away from his family. So, but it's one of those things where. We had a conversation, with some other friends, and they're like, don't even think about trying to go to New York unless there's something developed where, either mass testing or a vaccine or something, because it's going to be, it's just going to be a nightmare in terms of the crowding and in terms of, just everyone being under one roof. And I don't know if, I have the same complaints about San Diego. I mean, listen, I've never been to San Diego, so I can't really say. Again, it'd be nice to get Matt Wang's.
It's wall to wall people, shoulder to shoulder the entire time.
Right, but in terms of the comic book show part.
Oh yes, it is. It's video game publishers and TV studios and movie premiere people, and yeah, it's the same way.
Right. I mean, that's a big part of New York, but I think that New York definitely has, from anecdotal evidence, obviously that's all that I have from people that I have met that have been to both shows over the years, both San Diego and New York, saying that the retail aspects of New York far surpass what's available in San Diego. So maybe that's why I have a tough time describing New York as being just the entertainment thing. I remember when entertainment seemed to overwhelm the comic aspect. I do remember that. But I think there is a much better balance of it nowadays. But just all that aside, just going back to what I was talking about earlier, which is that, thinking about how jammed you are on the floor of the Javits Center in the midst of New York Comic Con, and then thinking about what, about how that just can't be given that in the age of COVID-19. I don't anticipate New York coming back, New York Comic Con coming back this year. That's just my conservative guess. I'm not even going to be too optimistic about it. I'm just sort of waiting for that other shoe to drop.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's just the world we live in.
Yeah. I'm just going to say that we need to get you guys and Tim to come down here to Heroes Con. So if you want the slice of a real comic convention that you're seeking, I know, Dirt, you are travel averse, but still, if we can work that out some kind of way.
The money I would have used for my new MacBook Pro, I'm gonna throw at you for a plane ticket.
Actually, how far are you from Washington D.C.?
Me, I'm like about 7 hours.
So day's drive.
Yeah.
Because we were just talking about when all this gets lifted, we'd like to take the kids to Washington D.C. because that's a place that they've never been. So, yeah, maybe we can finagle, some sort of couple days off to the side during the trip to Washington D.C.
You know what I was gonna say? What show I've heard very good things about is Baltimore.
Yes.
Baltimore Comic Con. I've heard very, very good things about it. That it's not entertainment industry oriented, and that's only like 40 minutes away from DC. So but I think the timing of it though is that it's in October, so I think that conflicts with school and all that other stuff. So it's a little tougher for family trips. But Baltimore is the show that I would like to hit up. That's not that far a drive for me. It's only like a 4-hour drive. So
yeah, we'll
All
work
right.
all that out. So we can go and keep this. So bear with me for 1 second while I do one thing. Cool. And we come back with go to the rest of the news. I don't know if Dirt, you want to stick around for this, or you want to?
My earpiece is about to die here. It keeps telling me, please charge. So I'm going to drop out. But
thanks for coming on for part 2 of Crisis, man.
Yeah, it was nice to be on. Thanks for letting me rant about the comic book industry for 45 minutes. What time is it?
That's all good.
An hour and a half?
We were going to get to it at some point, so whether now than later.
Right.
All
It's
right.
all good. It's all good. And whatchamacallit, if you have any suggestions about content for upcoming shows, because it doesn't look like we're getting new comics anytime soon, chime in if there's something that you want to talk about. Obviously, we're going to keep it in our behind the scenes chat, throwing out the ideas. So if you got something, let us know.
Okay, I'll look to see what I can find. I'll talk to you guys later.
All right.
You gotta
take
take
it easy.
See ya.
All right.
And with that, oh geez, what happened to this shot?
All right. So where are we on the news? We are.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. I just need to get my. Actually, you know what? I don't need my shot for this. This is for some strange reason the shots just went all kind of wonky. But yeah, we will finish up with that DC news about the Batman 92, or keep going with the Batman 92 news.
Do that one. All right. So DC plans June release for Batman number 92. Batman writer James Tynion IV has offered up new details about when the DC flagship title will return, saying DC is planning a June release, which seems practical, for Batman number 92 to maximize the number of stores able to sell physical copies. That makes a little bit of sense.
Yes. And going forward, speaking with DC rushes new Giants stories to digital release. So DC's efforts to address the effects of coronavirus crisis, aka COVID-19, on the comic book direct market continues. The publisher announced recently that the immediate expansion of their DC Digital First publishing program, which we kind of sort of touched on earlier in the midst of all of that, but nevertheless, that this is what they're doing. Program announced that under the daily robust new program, comic book readers will have more variety and content immediately and immediate access to stories that have never been available on digital platforms. So yeah, and some stuff coming up with including Swamp Thing, Flash, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, etc.
Yeah. All right. Next up, Tom King has announced that he's nearly finished a new limited series, which, according to him, is one of the most ambitious projects he's ever worked on. So he posted this on Twitter, and it's a tease and asking people to come back, asking people to be on the lookout for when we come back from quarantine. There'll be something awesome waiting for everyone.
So yeah, he's basically one of those ones that's like, all right, I'm gonna keep working on some stuff while we're doing all of this. So or we're going through all of this. So we'll see what happens when that comes out. Free digital. Well, I thought I already did this. Free DC digital releases includes issue 1 of Mr. Miracle, Batman Hush, Sandman, Metal, and more. So again, that old digital thing that was that we just talked about. They're giving away some free promotional stuff. DC is. Available now through June 8th on DC's digital platform of readdc.com, Comixology, Amazon Kindle, Apple Books, and more. And you can get such books as Crisis on Infinite Earths #1, that we talked about last week, by the way.
Exactly.
Doomsday Clock #1, Watchmen #1, Sandman #1, Dark Knight's Metal #1, Batman 608, which is the start of Hush's arc, and Mr. Miracle, the aforementioned Mr. Miracle #1. So
I love it. They're still releasing Hush, which is like how many years old?
I know,
God.
right? Which we mentioned it last week. We might have to possibly consider doing that one for some other reason, but we'll
It'll
get
take
on that.
a while to repeat that, but yeah, okay.
Next up,
All right, so Aquaman writer Kelly Sue DeConnick revealed to Sci-Fi Wire in an interview the one character she would never kill off. Ever since she took over writing duties on Aquaman, the character has had to face numerous challenges. His latest trial, his newborn daughter, Princess Andy, has been kidnapped by an unknown party. Speaking in that interview, DeConnick promised that no harm would befall the newborn princess.
good to know. Kelly Sue DeConnick also is auctioning off Captain Marvel's flight jacket to benefit comic book stores. So Kelly Sue DeConnick, who's famously reimagined, well, not necessarily reimagined, but you might as well say that, who brought Karen Danvers to prominence as Captain Marvel, is auctioning off a signed commemorative flight jacket from the filming of Marvel Studios' Captain Marvel film. Like I said, she is the one who pretty much brought Carol into her Captain Marvel status. So she is the one that made the version possible. But yeah, she's giving it to Comics for Creators, and under the hashtag Comics for Creators. Creators for Comics. I screwed that up. My apologies. And that is going on. And I think, let's see, the auction is actually over as of the time of this recording. So some lucky person ended up getting that, and that is for the Bink Foundation.
Nice. That's actually a really cool bit of memorabilia.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of an online auction to benefit comic shops, writer Scott Snyder is auctioning 4 spots in an online version of his comic book writing course, Writing First Issues. I have to open up the link to see where that auction is available, if it is still available. Let's see.
It's pretty much the same way. They through a bank, I think. Yeah. So it's the same creators for comics, and that auction is also done.
Oh, it just ended. I see on 420.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. 420.
Things ended on 420.
I thought it was kind of funny.
Giving different meaning to the date.
I know, right? Look it up, folks. Jim Lee summons up Wildcats and Sandman for latest comic shop auction art. DCU's chief creative officer publisher Jim Lee has created 2 more sketches for the ongoing 60-day 60 sketches drawathon auction to benefit comic shops. The latest 2 editions are group shots: Zealot and Grifter from Wildcats, and Dream and some of the Endless from the Sandman. Grifter was chosen by high bidder on the Wonder Girl auction, and Lee took it upon himself to add Zealot. So there you go, and you can see the shots off of his Instagram. And this is again the Comics for Creators, the creator for comics. I don't know why I keep mixing that up. Auction that has gone on. Next.
All right. So speaking of the Huntress, and those thigh-high boots, but there's a different, obviously there's a new take. She's got a lot more pouches and weapon straps, a la Jim Lee's revamped design. Apparently, the first auction winner missed their chance to purchase Jim Lee's exclusive drawing of the Huntress that he had placed up for auction. The buyer flaked, so you have a chance at redemption if you regret not being the high bidder on this Huntress piece of art. It's a right half of a diptych, the 2-piece art piece featuring Deathstroke. The auction is only for the Huntress side. So this is on Twitter. Or Instagram, actually.
Yeah.
And I think it leads to eBay.
Yeah, more than likely. Yeah, and that diptych kind of reminds me of a joke from an old movie that I won't repeat. So, Hellboy's Mike Mignola is auctioning off, or probably had auctioned off, serial mascot artwork. Mike Mignola offered a throwback to Saturday mornings with his latest charity auction. The Hellboy creator was auctioning off a series of 4 sketches featuring famous serial mascots on eBay. The sketches feature the following characters: Snap, Crackle, Pop from Rice Krispies, and Tony the Tiger, because they're great. Toucan Sam from Fruit Loops, and the respective mascots from Quisp and Quake cereals. Wait, did Quake even? I don't know Quisp, but did Quake even have a mascot? I don't remember.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't either. Either way, it's out there. You can see the sketches that he did out there. I'm assuming on his Instagram. Next.
next up, DC has partnered with Oni, Lionforge, and Bink to create a united fund to benefit U.S. comic shops. So this is in conjunction with Bink, the book industry charitable foundation. Those funds are now being organized into a distinct relief effort called the Comic Book United Fund, with DC and Oni Press Lionforge in on the ground floor. Good for them.
Yeah, indeed. And the news that I feel like was prescient by us a couple of weeks ago,
Yes.
comic creators and more played TSR's Marvel Superheroes live online to raise funds for comic book retailers. So, folks, remember back to the halcyon days of probably about 2-3 weeks ago when we spoke of the death of the co-founder of TSR, who made the Marvel Superheroes and other. I was like, they're basically D&D and other offshoots that they made. So a group of comic creators, animation actors, and RPG creators are banded together to raise funds for comic creators. Play the cult favorite TSR game, Marvel Superheroes. The reason why I bring up the first thing is because we said at the end of when we were talking about the co-creator dying, we said somebody was going to end up playing Marvel Superheroes at some date soon. And sure enough, now this probably has nothing to do with this. This probably they already had this out the work, but it's kind of funny.
Right. I mean, especially during quarantine.
Exactly.
Going to be something that would pop up. And for fans of the show, we discussed this particular role-playing game within the last year or two, and we mutually discovered online resources that would help us rediscover this particular role-playing game, as well as many other role-playing games,
and have very much taken advantage of that resources since then. Now, granted, we haven't said we were going to do this or that and other. We thought about it,
right?
But
it's definitely something that's on the table to consider. It does take a little bit of legwork on everyone's part, but like we said earlier, it's nice that we have the resource. We just have to kind of organize it, and if we could get like a playing group, that would be something.
That'd be dope. Yes, but yeah, beginning April 16th is when this started. So I don't think it was a one-off campaign. It's called And There Came a Day Unlike Any Others. If you're a fan of the Avengers, you know where that comes from.
Right.
On let's see, Twitch.tv Tales from the Grim is where they have been doing it, and it is Kat Cahill, Jamal Nicholas, Jonathan Callan. Basically, the name that some of you may know from Comic Book Chronicles history is Jackson Lanning, who I believe we have had on this show.
Yes.
And I know for a fact that he has been. This is not his first foray into this because he, some other folks actually was doing a campaign on Twitch from something else. Actually, I think they were doing like a sci-fi focused one a while back, and I don't know if that one's still going or not. But nevertheless, this is another campaign that they started running, and it's a cool thing. I meant to, because I think the VODs are still out there, so you can still check this out now, because I know they keep VODs for a couple of weeks now, and it's probably out there on YouTube if they did that much. And if the campaign is still going, then you can go to that Twitch link that I just discussed and check it out. So it is some good stuff, and I would really like to see their sheets and stuff from the Marvel Superheroes thing. So.
Exactly. All right. Next up, an emergency relief initiative has been launched for Canadian comic book shops. So, as we mentioned earlier, there's lots of fundraising efforts online for U.S. comic book shops. This new initiative is launched specifically for Canadian comic book stores, the Canadian not-for-profit, the Comic Legends Legal Defense Fund, subtly different from the U.S.-based CBLDF, decided to expand their mandate beyond censorship battles to launch a rental relief program to assist Canadian comic book stores and have contributed $10,000 Canadian themselves to start the program. So yeah, this is a welcome effort. It's launched under a hashtag Canucks for Comics, intending to have auctions similar to hashtag Creators for Comics, with 100% of all proceeds aimed at going directly to brick and mortar comic shops located in Canada.
Indeed. So it's great to see efforts like this that are going on with everything else that is happening. And we kind of teased this earlier, but it's official. San Diego Comic-Con and WonderCon 2020 are canceled and will not be rescheduled. So there is that, folks.
Yep.
And it says here that additionally, WonderCon looks like has been scheduled to. WonderCon at least has been scheduled to take place March 26th through 28th next year, 2021. So there you go.
Right.
And it looks like here actually it says San Diego might be rescheduled to July 22nd to 25th next year if that goes on. So
right.
Next up.
One of the things that comes out during San Diego Comic-Con are the Will Eisner Industry Awards. So despite the cancellation of San Diego Comic-Con, the 2020 Will Eisner Industry Awards are going ahead. Things are in flux, but they hope to have a list of Eisner Award winners for 2020. Judging has been handled mostly online, virtually to date. So they just need a proper time to announce them. So that's pretty cool.
And a lot of times they usually put the nominees and the and I know news sites will basically say who won because they're there at the thing,
Right.
So usually the nominations come out online anyway, and so they're kind of halfway there with a lot of that stuff. COVID-19 survivor Joseph Ilyich reveals what it's like. So this is an intervene, which I did not know this. He had COVID-19, but
not surprising though, because he is a Brooklynite, and my understanding is that he lives in one of the more hard-hit areas of Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
I've met him several times in shops. And he actually he pulls at 2 comic book stores in Brooklyn that I visit on an infrequent basis, and I've met him a couple times at one of them that's closest to my house. So I'm not surprised that he would maybe come down with it, because he's probably in some very heavy traffic areas.
Right. So we have talked about this. He's a pretty well-regarded editor at large for many different places across the comic industry. Even had a column at a news site and stuff. But he's done a lot of stuff to do. And I think I had a chance to meet him at Heroes Con like the last time I went, and I saw him signing at the table, but I was like, well, he's busy. I'm not gonna mess with him. So, but so yes. But if you're interested in what he's gone through with COVID-19, you can read this article from Newsarama to find that out. Next up.
Kane Marco versus himself. Check out this Juggernaut #1 first look. So this is by Fabian Nicieza and Ron Garney, who are teaming up for a new and extra violent Juggernaut series. This was originally solicited to debut May 6th. The release date is now to be determined, but there is a first look at some of Ron Garney's interior art at Newsarama. Follow the link on our show notes.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just flip through a couple of those real quick. Marvel Okay, I want to make sure I didn't skip one. Marvel debuts New Mutant, who may be as powerful as Scarlet Witch. I'm trying to remember if this issue actually came out or not. This was from New Mutants #9, which I can't remember if it actually came out or not. So we won't really go into too far on that without knowing that was the case. I want to say that might have been one of the last ones that came out, but I don't remember. So we'll just leave it at that. Next up.
All right, and some sad news, although it could be a lot worse. You know, it really could. Let's be honest, right?
Mm.
Several employees of Marvel Entertainment have been told that they will be furloughed as part of Walt Disney Company's wider measures to stem the financial effects of the coronavirus pandemic. Newsarama has confirmed that the affected Marvel employees are being notified, and that furloughs will be taking effect Sunday, April 26th. So this is their last full week on the payroll. Furloughing, I'm sure people are familiar, but just as a note, furloughing an employee is where a company puts them on a temporary leave of absence that may or may not be paid in the time off. In some countries, government funding is available to partially replace the employee's lost income. So they may not lose their job, but they may be losing their pay for this particular time that they are on furlough.
Hmm. And going back a news item I just checked. Yeah, New Mutants #9 was the last one to officially come out. So there was a little Russian girl that may be powerful, as powerful as Scarlet Witch. So there you go. Cable and the X-Force are coming to Fortnite. So yeah, Deadpool's already had his turn at Fortnite and for some sort of event, but now Fortnite is getting a new batch of skins, and this time X-Force is joining the party. It is Cable, Domino, and Psylocke. So those new skins will arrive just a couple of weeks after Deadpool himself dropped into the game, and yeah, you can purchase those at Fortnite's in-game store, I guess, if you are so inclined. Next.
All right. Creator Jim Starlin returns to his seminal creator-owned hero, Dreadstar, for the first time in 30 years. And not only is he writing it, he is drawing it after once thinking he would never be able to draw again. This book is scheduled to arrive in October from Ominous Press in a 100-page graphic novel by Starlin that he's now raising funds for on Kickstarter. In the new story, Vanth, Dreadstar will reunite with his former crewmates to confront a new universe-threatening menace. Interesting.
Yeah, Starlin, no strangers to the OGN for sure. This original graphic novel.
Exactly.
Speaking of graphic novels, a new Firefly graphic novel will explore the life, death, and afterlife of Wash. Spoiler alert, folks. Wash died in the movie Serenity. Sorry. I haven't seen it yet, but even I knew that. But nevertheless, the pilot of the good ship Serenity will soar like a leaf on the wind once more. Boom Studios' collection of Firefly comics and graphic novels have revitalized the verse in the best possible way. Yada yada yada. But IO9 can now exclusively reveal that its latest entry into the comics will delve into the life and times of one Hoban Washburn, played by Alan Tudyk in the series and film. Penned by Ethan Young and with art by George Corona. Firefly, Watch How I Soar will see Wash speared by a Reaver harpoon and bleeding out. Flashback to key moments of his life and ultimately lead him to meeting Zoe, joining the Serenity and Captain Small's crew, and living the high life of a hotshot pilot in stories previously unknown to Firefly fans. So if you're a fan of Wash and hated that he died like I was when you found out, not seeing the movie, there you go. You can relive that misery once more, or go back and watch Firefly again and continue to do the same thing. And Serenity, I have still yet to watch Serenity, even knowing that, because I didn't want it to be over. That's all I'm gonna say. Next up, Elizabeth Sladen's daughter will play Sarah Jane Smith in Doctor Who's latest audio adventure.
Who?
So yes, Sarah Jane Smith is probably one of Doctor Who's most popular, most known and beloved companions. And Elizabeth Sladen, rest in peace. Actually, I would say for Carrie Elizabeth, but it's been a couple of years now. But yeah, so now she's got a new audiobook story, and her daughter is going to be the one who's bringing Sarah Jane to life. so to speak. That was not meant as a joke or anything. That just happened to come out that way. So yeah, but you can, let's see, what is it called? Return of the Cybermen. So which means that it's going to be the tales of the Fourth Doctor and Sarah Jane. If you are, if you didn't already know where that was going to lie, there you go. Next up.
All right. So apparently, there is a pre-order retailer tool that Bad Idea publisher has provided. Don't want to miss out on ENIAC from Bad Idea. They are here to help as part of their ongoing support for comic shops to make sure they can hit the ground running once the COVID-19 pandemic has passed. Bad Idea has developed an exclusive pre-order portal for the release of ENIAC #1 by Matt Kint and Doug Braithwaite. You can reserve your copy directly from a Bad Idea destination store, and by first going to whereisbadidea.com or click the pre-order tab at badideacorp.com to locate your nearest Bad Idea destination store. Interesting. Don't mind me. I'm playing with my new Marvel Legends. This is just 2 figures of very, very many that I have already opened and put into, my own private, my own personal storage so that I can curate my shelves when I'm up for it. I've already started. I've already got this 2-pack of Wolverine first appearance and the Incredible Hulk. So just don't mind me. I'm playing in the background.
Yeah, which no one would have seen or knew about because it didn't have the focus on you anyway. Until just then, but that's,
Just checking. I wasn't sure.
Yeah. No, I got it on the news now, but I did put it on you for a second when you said that.
On so many. What I was going to say is that we've had to change our our means of communication for the show a couple of times. So it's always hard to remember what the standards are nowadays. What actually is happening when we're doing the news.
It's all good. Twitter's hashtag comics that made me cry will bring a tear to your eye. So yeah, I saw this this hashtag trending, and apparently earlier this week the hashtag comic it says comic that made me cry was a trending topic on Twitter, as the hashtag was filled with fun and touching examples of comics that made people cry. As you scroll through the hashtag, it's not hard to notice examples from every corner of the comics universe, from the big 2 of Marvel and DC to the creator-owned and smaller publishers like Image. So I guess some examples here are when Peter Parker from the Ultimate Universe lost his life, paved his way for Miles. That's one. Peter's funeral from that same universe. Let's see. Bruce Wayne had a son, that being Damian. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Say, what was the last one you mentioned?
Bruce Wayne finding out about Damian, that he had a son. Yeah. So yeah, but there are many examples of that. So what?
What would yours be off the top?
I was going to ask you that same question, and I'm not sure actually.
I can think of a couple.
Okay, go for it.
I can think of a couple. One of them is there is an issue. There's an issue of Uncanny X-Men. I don't know if it's. I'm going to look it up while I'm describing it. I don't know if it's a Claremont issue. I don't believe so. I think it's post Claremont, or at least his first main Uncanny run. Let me see if I can find an issue number because I know the cover. But what happens in the book is it's in the midst of the legacy virus, and Ilyana Rasputin had been. This is a time when she had been reduced to being a little kid. And she ends up dying from the legacy virus. And the story revolves around Jubilee dealing with her passing. And it's really, really well done. It's really impactful. I get choked up just thinking about it because I remember what it was like to read that when it first came out. So let me see if I can get the the issue number up without having to Google it, because I can definitely go through this and like literally just like scrolling through the covers and just see what number we are referring to. Just bear with me, folks. It's but you probably remember it now that I describe what happened in the issue itself. The cover is white, and it has. I'm trying to see if I could find this without having to Google it. Okay.
Oh yeah, that's burped.
All right. Let's see. No, I'm gonna have to Google it because I don't see it off the top of the dome. It's scrolling through my CBZ too, so I'm just going to just do a quick search.
While you're doing that, I think I remember a couple now.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we kind of sort of talked about one. These necessarily didn't make me cry, but they definitely had me kind of had the feeling something run away. One, Fall of the Mutants when Cypher died. Now, yeah, Cypher is kind of a Doug Ramsey is not necessarily the most he's not a great character. I mean, he was alright. He's like okay, he could talk to anything and everything, but one of the mutants died. That was pretty damn sad. And matter of fact, he died trying to save Wolfsbane, if I remember correctly. And in the midst of the battle, it was like, yeah, they didn't know he got shot until like after the battle was over with, and she started crying, and then, when they finally found them, and it was real sad. The other one was Avengers Disassembled, actually, when Hawkeye gave his life. Well, actually, the whole thing, because they started off with Jack Spades died. I think Ant-Man died on that one. Scott Lang had died, if I'm not mistaken, like right off the bat. And then Hawkeye ended up dying like not too long after that when everything started popping off at the mansion, and it was like a bad time. Also, when they beat the heck out of Jarvis, actually during Siege. That one kind of messed me up for a second, because it was like, oh damn, they are messing him up. I guess Jarvis, he ain't got no powers. And they just messed him up.
Right. I'm referring to Uncanny X-Men issue number 303. So if you Google that real quick, you'll see the cover has Jubilee and Jean Grey on the cover. It's actually written by Scott Lobdell and penciled by Richard Bennett. So it's kind of one of those off, art-wise, it's not exactly one of the mainstream artists that you associate with Uncanny X-Men. So that's, that's an issue that I think of when, like evoking like a lot of the sad feelings, because, you don't expect to see that when you're, when you're reading comics. I also think of when Mariko Yoshida passes away in the pages of Wolverine. She basically is, she has to cut off, as part of a way to make peace between the Yakuza family. She's asked to cut off a finger, and the blade that she's given to do it is coated with blowfish toxin, and it's the toxin that kills her. But she asked Wolverine to end it quickly. So it was a pretty rough ending to that one. So yeah, I mean, just off the dome, I can think of those two specifically, and they come from a specific era of X-Men too.
Right.
So
weird, and we both had X-Men related ones.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's plenty of them. There's plenty of them, but those seems to be those two in particular seem to be the ones that I think of when that comes up. I mean, I'm sure if I looked for Spidey stuff, like the original time that they killed off Aunt May, that was bad, So.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah, there are many out there. The hashtag is still out there if anybody's interested, and check that out. And if you have any of yourself, CB Cron on Twitter.
Yep.
We'll get them if you haven't already. Next up, and I believe that is the last one. Well, the next. Let me see. Yes. One more for. Oh no, it's not.
Oh wait, it's my turn, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Last one.
Yeah, 10 manga series to start reading on the Shonen Jump app. One of the best deals in digital comics. All right, fine. You're trying to sell me on this. You know,
That was unintentional, but hey.
Right. On DC side, you can get DC Universe app to get comics. On the Marvel side, of course, I'm one of those people that also has joined in on Marvel Unlimited. It's skewed towards their back issue catalog rather than instead of current issues. So enter the weekly Shonen Jump app, currently available in the US, Canada, the UK, Ireland, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa. Jesus. Which frankly knocks the vast majority of current digital subscription services on their collective butts. All right.
No Brazil, sadly, because I think anime is a big market there too. But anyway.
So now I got to look at this best deals in digital comics. Interesting.
Yeah, so this is also saying that yes, Shonen Jump has a new app that you can download and check out a bunch of books. That is the side note to this article.
Right. So the real deal is paying for the $2 a month subscription, which gets you access to Shonen Jump's humongous vault of prior chapters on top of the newer ones that come out on a weekly basis. There's thousands of chapters available across an equally ridiculous amount of series. It's almost too much. So whether you're an anime fan who wants to see the source material for some of your favorite shows, a comics curious newbie looking to add some variety to your digital pull list, a die-hard reader who wants to try something outside the realm of Western comics, or just someone who would like something really, really, really long to read right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of chapters.
Right, here are just a few of the series you should try dabbling in. All You Need to Kill, My Hero Academia and My Hero Academia Vigilantes, Food Wars, Shokugeki no Soma, literally all the Dragon Ball.
America Trio simplifies protection.
Oh, and that's an ad on the page.
Uh-oh.
Demon Slayer, Kametsu no Yaiba.
Worm disease.
Yes, the ones that you definitely know that's been talked about, out there in the Twitterverse.
Listen, $2 a month, if your income can support that, and we would joke about that under normal circumstances, but in this day and age we cannot.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can, then that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, and it's worth noting because I took a look at that app probably a day or two ago. They do have some stuff on there for free,
right?
But it's like chapters of like relatively current chapters of stuff. So. But it's still out there for free to read if you just want to check out the app and see what's what.
I go to the Apple App Store.
Yeah, or it's out there on I believe it's out there on Android also, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it's out there. I definitely know that for sure because I've seen it. But yeah, so that, folks, is that for the comic book news. We're going to circle back around to the cinematic news.
We have an astounding amount of news out this week for week 6 in quarantine now.
Mm-hmm. Hey, the news don't sleep.
Yeah, week 5 at least.
Yeah. So you got the stinger ready?
Yeah, we're gonna transition.
Mm-hmm. Cinematic news. First off, it's official. J.J. Abrams is developing a Justice League Dark TV series for HBO Max.
Okay.
J.J. Abrams' Bad Robot Productions will develop a TV series set in the Justice League Dark universe, quote unquote, for HBO Max. As announced in Variety, the project was previously reported to have moved under Bad Robot's creative banner for HBO Max. And it was also, I think, it's a rumor that we had talked about previously on this show. The official title of the Justice League Dark show was not announced. Bad Robot will also produce an original drama titled Duster and a spinoff of the Shining title. We don't care about that. That has nothing to do with anything. But yeah, there you go. And I think HBO Max is starting next month on the 24th or something like that. If anybody's interested in that, So next up.
All right. The May episodes of DC Universe's Harley Quinn have been reshuffled. This was to correct an internal error with distribution co-showrunner Patrick Schmacker tweeted to Newsarama. The episodes will now air in their intended order. Okay.
I still never understand why they even the stuff that gets put out of order when it gets on these digital sites in the first place. And this one was already on there, so why would you even do that? I'm looking at you, Clone Wars and X-Men.
Well, the original Clone Wars, yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, not the Jindu Tartarescu because before that, and yeah. Anywho's, speaking of Harley Quinn, DC Universe's Harley Quinn is coming to DVD. So there's a press release out there about it. They will be available on DVD on June 2nd, 2020 for $24.98, and the set features all 13 half-hour episodes. If you're interested in a physical copy, and or digital, obviously.
Right.
Yeah. Next.
All right. So, spoiler alert. Legends of Tomorrow just killed off a team member thanks to Charlie's sister Atropo. Behrad Tarazi's return was short-lived. Okay, so there's a bunch of names here I don't recognize. So yeah, just watch that. Have fun.
Yeah, I'm
not trying to spoil it.
No, because I haven't watched this either, and I'm like a couple of episodes behind. But a couple of seasons behind. I knew a little bit about what's going on though. But yeah, we don't have to go into that. Speaking of Legends of Tomorrow, Legends of Tomorrow's wild new trailer promises a Star Trek parody for the ages. And if you're watching the video, you can kind of see some a gif of one such shot. So yeah, these are the voyages of the Starship Wave Rider. DC's Legends of Tomorrow has released a new trailer for the remainder of the season 5, which has our legends hopping through space, time, space, and genres in search of the loom of fate that holds the key to changing everything. The series, like many, has been on a short break. When we last left Wave Rider, we saw the heartbreaking departure of Ray Palmer and Nora Dark. But now we're back and things look to be more chaotic as ever. So I'm just going to sit here and say that Legends of Tomorrow has been a fun show and sounds like it continues to be such. So I'm with it. You should check it out if you're so inclined. Next up.
All right. Spoiler alert, The Flash reveals another longtime character is a mirror doppelganger. Oh, for goodness sake.
Yeah, so apparently on The Flash, there's that thing going on, and the chief, David Singh, is apparently a doppelganger, and there's some mirror universe things going on here that I don't know what's going on that show right now. So, next up, Arrow's David Ramsey finally reveals Diggle's Green Lantern ring. So apparently, the last show in the series of Arrow had John Diggle opening up a box, and in that box was purported, I guess, supposed to be his the last shot was basically him opening up a box, and you see the green glow coming out of it. That suggests that it is his long-awaited, long-sought, long-wondered about Green Lantern ring. But on Instagram, David Ramsey shows that it's just a box with a green light in it.
Ah!
So, and it with the caption, "My Power." So, here you go. There's that. Because people have been wanting Diggle, including myself, wanting Diggle to be Green Lantern since season 1 of Arrow, and that never happened until sounds like I think they did something on the last crossover, where Crisis of Infinite Earths. that played around with that a little bit. So there you go. Next up.
All right, so Warner Brothers has reportedly reached a stalemate with Lucifer star Tom Ellis over his contract for a potential 6th season. So according to TV Line, Ellis has rejected the studio's latest offer. Notably, he finalized his contract extension for season 6 last month, which means, depending on those terms, he could be found in breach of contract should he not hold up his end of the bargain.
Ooh. Right.
I was about to say.
Basically. Gal Gadot wanted to make Wonder Woman 1984 like James Bond and Indiana Jones. Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot push for Diana Prince to be an international hero in Wonder Woman 1984, similar to Indiana Jones or James Bond. You know what? I wouldn't be opposed to that. Per film industry analyst Luis Fernando, Jenkins and Gadot pushed to make Wonder Woman a worldwide heroine, not only American, quote unquote, by making a film a global experience, quote unquote, again, utilizing international locations. Do I have to say it again? As in Indiana Jones and James Bond's films did in the 80s. So, and then it just goes on from there. But I don't know. That'd have been interesting. I don't know. We'll see. Well, we still don't know what all that movie is going to be right now. But you know, so usually an article like this would come out after the fact. So the fact that it's like well before is kind of interesting. Anyway, moving right along.
All right, so this is news that has recently been updated. Universal Pictures has gone into business with Amasia Entertainment for the planned Green Hornet film reboot, according to Deadline. All right. Universal has a long history with Green Hornet, with the studio producing 2 film series for the star in the early 1940s. In the 1990s, Universal was in active development on a Green Hornet film, but the studio lost the rights to the possible film franchise in 2001, but it has now reacquired them.
Cool. Yes, and who could forget or actually remember that Seth Rogen Green Hornet movie from a few years ago? Nobody? Exactly. Doctor Strange 2 Boss Logic poster features huge Avengers foe and Deadpool. With Sam Raimi officially signed on to take over for Scott Derrickson to direct Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, fan artist Boss Logic has put their own spin on the spooky sequel with a fan poster, including a major Avengers villain and the surprise appearance of Deadpool for some reason. Although the plot of the upcoming movie is shrouded in mystery, the Doctor Strange sequel is confirmed to bring Elizabeth Olsen's Scarlet Witch into the fold, is rumored to include Brother Voodoo as another Sorcerer Supreme, and hopefully explore the potential of the Marvel multiverse thanks to its cryptic title. Now Boss Logic adds a few more familiar faces to the potential mix. And you can see the poster he did right there on the Twitters. Which is weird because it says I see an Iron Man looking character, and I see a couple other folks, but I'm not entirely sure who the villain is, and I don't know if this article says. Let's see here or not. You know what? Hey, guess what? Doesn't matter. You can work for yourself. Moving right along.
All right. While it hasn't been confirmed whether the overweight version of Thor from Avengers Endgame will appear in Thor: Love and Thunder, people for the ethical treatment of animals have suggested a way to have Thor shed those pounds in a recent letter sent to director Taika Waititi, which is the suggestion is to make him vegan. Okay.
That is my hot take on that. It is also worth noting because I think that we did talk about this last week or whenever I think it's been all but confirmed that Fat Thor is not going to be in I think this article came out before that actually happened. But yeah, you know what, the less I say about that, the better. Shang-Chi, Ed Brubaker reacts to rumors of, spoiler, is Hero's father. So it says, every comic book adaptation takes creative liberties with its original source material, and the upcoming Shang-Chi and Legends of the Ten Rings appears to be no different. While the comic book Shang-Chi is the son of pulp literary villain Fu Manchu, the Marvel Cinematic Universe incarnation is rumored to be the son of the Mandarin, portrayed in the film by Tony Leung.
It's not, what's his name? It's not Gandhi.
Say what?
It's not Gandhi.
No, it's not Trevor. It's not Trevor. Yeah, as the film's central antagonist, Eisner Award-winning comic book writer Ed Brubaker, who pit Shang-Chi against his father during the acclaimed Secret Avengers run, commented on the rumors that Marvel Studios had potentially changed the Marvel martial artist superheroes to the Mandarin. Well, it says okay. Well, that's obvious. That's obviously a rights issue. Fu Manchu was a license that Marvel lost a long time ago, so they can't use them in the movies or the comics, and not to mention potentially problematic. Um, Observed Baker in an exclusive interview with CBR. But the struggle against an evil father is a primary thing Shang-Chi is about, so you need a replacement father one way or another to tell the story. So, yeah, there you go. Next up.
Alrighty. Next up, Sony Pictures officially announced that the release of Venom 2 has been pushed to next year. The sequel, now entitled Venom Let There Be Carnage, will now hit theaters June 25th, 2021. It was originally slated to open October 2nd, 2020.
Who asked for any of these movies? Moving right along. Cassian Andor's Disney Plus Star Wars series just got even more interesting. Cassian Andor and K2SO are getting some new friends or foes, as the case may be. A variety of reports that Disney Plus' upcoming Rogue One spinoff has added both Stellan Skarsgård from Thor and Dune and Kyle Soller to its cast as characters whose identities have yet to be revealed. Given how many Disney productions are currently on hold as a consequence of the ongoing COVID-19 outbreak, there's no telling just when we might be able to get to learn more about what they'll be bringing to the show. So, yeah, we got some folks, but we don't know who they'll be, and it's probably gonna be a minute before that happens. Next.
All right. Spoiler alert. As I work Echo. Star Wars, the Clone Wars, revealed the origin of Fulcrum. I'm not spoiling this. This happened in last week's episode.
Right, and since I haven't seen that episode, I'm not gonna go any further into this article. Hey, I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Ooh, hurry up!
I'm getting there. Doggone it.
We're in quarantine. What else you got to do?
Well, you'd be
By
surprised.
the way, I was about to say, by the way, I just finished my original watch of The Office. I always shock people who are like, "This, you never watched The Office before?" I literally just finished it today.
I don't feel bad. I haven't done either, but that's on purpose. I've seen a
Right.
couple episodes, but
I was about to say, yeah, I had never watched any episodes, and I had initially started this watch before quarantine.
mhm.
So, it just, I just had more time to get through it. So, but they go quickly. They're only like 20 minutes a shot.
Right.
So,
Wait, is this?
somewhat
I'm sorry. Is this U.S. or?
U.S.
Okay. Yeah. So,
U.S. I haven't opted for the British.
Gotcha. In other Star Wars news, Kylo Ren battles the Resistance in Galaxy of Adventures short, and apparently he kills a bunch of folk. The second season of Star Wars Galaxy of Adventures has released a new episode featuring Kylo Ren and the forces of the First Order carving a path of destruction throughout the galaxy. The Supreme Leader is shown wielding his fiery red crossword lightsaber as he cuts down a group of Resistance fighters, with his Knights of Ren joining the hunt. Based on the fact that Kylo is wearing his pieced-together helmet, it can be inferred that the sequence takes place around the same time as the events of Star Wars Rise of Skywalker. Okay, and you can go check that out on our YouTube channel, so bye, yeah. Next.
All right, next up, Marvel's Moon Knight show has a start date and a working title. So this is a Marvel TV series set to be released on Disney Plus. Filming is scheduled to start on November 16th of this year, according to Production Weekly. Production will continue over 26 weeks under the working title Good Faith. So, in the event that I am able to hit the streets of New York again in that time, let's see if I spot any no parking signs that say Good Faith. You know that. Remember when I used to do that for the Netflix Marvel shows? I'd be like, "Oh, they're shooting Daredevil," and I spotted their, or I think it was Luke Cage. I think it was something about a tiara.
Yeah.
Yeah, I spotted the Luke Cage signs in Lower Manhattan near the courthouses. So,
well, stay tuned to see how that pans out, folks. Maybe Agent 7 will be on a future episode of Moon Knight.
We'll see.
Yeah. LeVar Burton confirms that he's had talks about appearing on Star Trek Picard. LeVar Burton has revealed that there's been talks about his character Geordi LaForge appearing on Star Trek Picard. Season 1 of the not quite sequel to Star Trek The Next Generation is available. Oh, we know this. We don't need to go there. The show sees Patrick Stewart return as Jean-Luc Picard. Come on.
Yeah, tune into our episode of Comic Book Chronicles where we discuss the first season of Picard.
Yeah, and yeah, in fact, yeah, I need to retweet that one also since I've been doing that lately with the last couple of shows. But yeah, that was like 3 weeks ago, so you should definitely check that out. In an interview with Entertainment Tonight, Burton was asked about the possibility of returning in a future season of Star Trek Picard. The TNG actor was coy in his response, but he did say his return as Geordi LaForge has been quote-unquote talked about. So, I'll be like, so I didn't mention that we talked about it, but that would be one of the ones I would love to see come back. Because it would make sense, like, especially given, you know, some parts of what the season was talking about, like it would have made sense for Geordi to come into play. And I was kind of surprised that they didn't do it. So, anyway, next up,
in news that I find enjoyable because I have been reading this Image series. Rodney Barnes's and Jason Sean Alexander's creator-owned Image comic series Killadelphia, Sins of the Father, is in development for television through Blinded by the Light producers Levantine Films, as announced in Deadline. Killadelphia tells the story of a cop who returns home to Philadelphia after his father's death, only to uncover a supernatural mystery in his hometown. Spoilers! There's lots of blood. Barnes, whose previous TV credits as screenwriter and producer include The Boondocks, Everybody Hates Chris, Marvel's Runaways, Wu-Tang, and American Saga and American Gods, will produce the adaptation alongside Levantine Films. Like I said, I've been reading this, so that's pleasant news for me.
Yeah, I figured you'd get a kick out of this if you hadn't seen it already. So, next up, Demolition Man's writer wasn't trying to be prescient. He just wanted to make a funny movie. So, so yeah, if you've been on Twitter, you've probably seen the gif of a particular scene in the Demolition Man's movie where two characters are going for a high five, but then stop and just do a midair wave. Basically, social distancing well before there was social distancing. And yeah, so the writers basically just came out and said that he talked about the latest global phenomenon to get the Demolition Man predicted it. Round of applause. Social distancing. In the movie, physical contact had been largely banned. Sex is now done virtually. Meetings can be called into remotely. Stop me if you've heard that before. And characters give each other air high fives instead of handshakes. What makes it feels even more eerie is the reason behind it. As explained by Lenina Sandra Bullock, it was because people kept spreading diseases to one another. At the time, it was a commentary on the AIDS crisis, but now it takes on a different tone because of COVID-19 coronavirus. So, yeah, there you go, folks. There's that. You can read the rest of that article, but basically, the dude was like, "Yeah, we're just trying to be funny. We weren't trying to be present." I'm like, "Look, dude, ride it one way or the other." Next up.
Alrighty. Next up, Matthew Vaughn has confirmed that he originally wanted Brad Pitt as Big Daddy in 2010's Kick-Ass before the role went to Nicolas Cage. It's interesting.
I think we were better for it though. Nick Cage was pretty much Nick Cage in that in his portrayal. So
right, he a special Nick Cage crazy to it. So
yeah, he just channeled it. He didn't go full Cage, but he channeled it just enough. So Tessa Thompson is helping to turn a Reddit sci-fi horror story into a Amazon TV show. It's time to get preview pasta. Amazon Studios has announced plans to adapt Q Code's The Left Right Game podcast, based on the Reddit R No Sleep story by Jack Anderson. The podcast star Tess Thompson is on board as an executive producer. According to Deadline, Amazon beat out 10 film and television offers to adapt the Left Right Game, a podcast currently in the middle of its 10-episode season. The story comes from a multi-part tale first published on the R No Sleep subreddit 2 years ago. In addition to Thompson, the podcast star Amil Amin, W. Early Brown, Dayo Akini, Inanna Sarkis, and others. So it's about a journalist named Alice Sharman who starts shadowing a group of paranormal explorers diving into something called the Left-Right Game, taking place over a series of previously taped recordings uncovered by a friend, the show's narrator. The podcast reveals Alice's journey into the supernatural and her own disappearance. So there you go, in case you were wondering about that. Next.
All right. So as we wait for the first season of Ghost in the Shell, SAC_2045, to drop on Netflix soon, we have new clips online that from that first season, plus news that season 2 has been confirmed. The first season of the anime series is set to drop on April 23rd, and season 2 is expected to premiere later in 2020 or early 2021. Again, this is on Netflix.
Yes, as a matter of fact, as the time of this writing, that the first season of that is out. Which when I saw this article, I was like, the first season is not even out yet. What are y'all doing? But there you go. So I'm slightly gonna check this out. If you're a fan of Ghost in the Shell or the TV version standalone complex, you maybe possibly check this out. I don't know.
I read the comics.
Oh right, the manga. Yeah.
Yeah, in the day.
Yeah, I still have yet to do that, but I kind of want to, and I haven't finished standalone complex either. But you know, I got through like a good bit of the first season.
Yeah, like published on published in Dark Horse, published by Dark Horse Manga.
Oh right. Last but not least, folks. Yip. All 3 seasons of Avatar: The Last Airbender will hit Netflix in May. To where some people was asking, I thought it was 4 seasons. It is not, because Aang already knew airbending, and therefore the rest of all the seasons were him trying to learn the other 3 elements to airbend, to bend, to become the complete Avatar. So there you go. So now you can catch up with with Aang and the gang on Netflix, starring May 15th. And
all right.
Hopefully they have everything in order.
All right, we're gonna bring the show home. It is late, and
Yes.
you know what ad read I'm gonna default to.
Which I was about to say, which is kind of sad because I just bought the DVDs on that, and I think I know where he's going with this ad. So,
Keep our podcast free by shopping at Amazon. Visit ESPN.us, then click the Keep Our Podcast Free link at the top of the page. From there, scroll down and click on the Amazon link to shop. Purchase items from Amazon as you normally would, whether it's books, music, electronics, jewelry, apparel, or Marvel Legends. For every purchase made on Amazon through our link, Amazon sends the CSPN payment. That helps us keep the Comic Book Chronicles podcast free for our listeners at no extra cost to you. Amazon.com through CSPN.us. Do it today.
I was supposed to say, there you go. Put yourself in front of behind the shot. There you go. Yeah. So if you're watching the video, you're missing. If you're not watching the video, you're missing Agent 70 hold up his Marvel Legends Hulk and Wolverine figures in a pose similar to one that they might have taken when they first met. Back in what was that? Was that 181?
Yes, Incredible Hulk 181. The
Yay.
cameo appearance is cameo appearances in 180. The full appearance is 181.
Yeah, so Incredible Hulk 181 from back in the day.
Yep.
And that, folks, ends this here Comic Book Chronicles show. Thank you for sitting with us. If you lasted this long, this is extra length version. Not that we don't go this long anyway sometimes, but we will be back next week. We're not sure. We haven't really pinned down what we're going to do next week, but we will let you know.
Yes, we'll put it out there. We'll try to get guests. We'll try to have lots of stuff to talk about, and we will stay on top of comic book movie and comic book news.
Yes, we will be doing another event next week. We're not sure what. We might go back to Marvel. We might do some X-Men stuff. We don't know. We'll figure that out in the course of the week and let y'all know. Until then, I have been Roddykat, and you can find me at Roddykat on the Twitters. You can also find me at News Nerds Need on Twitter. You can also find me at CBCaps on Instagram. Agent_70 and his wonderful collection of Marvel Legends will be on Agent_70 on Twitter and also Instagram. And he's also in the Matrix, just in case. So if you find him there, you know, he's becoming the one slowly and surely. He just don't want to tell us that. PCN_dirt. You can find him. Nice. He's stuck that woe in there. I see what you did there. PCN_dirt on Twitter. Pop Culture Net on Twitter. PopCultureNetwork.com and all those umbrella sites therein. Also, the Vine replacement Byte, BYTE, under the name Comic Reviews, no vowels. Also, the Osiris Satis Ish 1, Tim DOGG98 on Twitter, CB Cron on Twitter, that is the Comic Book Chronicles Twitter account, The Click Nation on Twitter, that's DKLIQTA, almost had it, The KLIQNATION, all one word, and also Comic Book Resources, where he's over there writing his face off. You can find this here program at the Cold Slither Podcast Network. That's CSPN.us.
Do it today.
You can also find this podcast at your podcast perusal place of choice, whether it be Google Play, Apple iTunes, Spotify, and the Cold Slither Podcast Network's SoundCloud page. We will be back next week. We sadly missed the anniversary of Prince's death on the 21st, but you know what? Play some Prince when you get a chance. You know, not just that day, but any day is fine, because you know what? Prince is forever.
Yep.
And with that, we will be back next week. Like I said, we'll let you know on our thing. We'll be back next week, next Thursday, 9:30-ish. Between 9 and 9:30 p.m.
We really should be on at 9, since it's not like any of us have to commute home from work. We really should be able to start earlier.
Yeah, you would think after all this time we would have gotten that together even in this time, but yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. But nevertheless, that's why I say 9-ish when we record on the Click Nation's YouTube channel, where you can catch our smiling faces and whatnot there. And with that, this has been the Comic Book Chronicles. Peace.
Peace. One.